Chapter 408. Troops clean up the battlefield. Retrieve all the arrows that can be retrieved. Jiang Pingji spat out the wild grass in her mouth. She stood straight and looked into the distance. She could faintly see the city standing on the horizon. Clean up the battlefield, then set up camp and rest. Once we're full, we'll attack the city at night. Feng Jin frowned. Attack the city at night? That's not appropriate. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, it's very disadvantageous for us to fight at night, but it's even more disadvantageous for them. Feng Jin opened his mouth and wanted to stop Jiang Pingji from taking the risk. They had too few troops on hand and could not afford to gamble. Don't worry, Huayu. I'm not a brainless boar. Since we've decided to attack the city at night, we have a certain degree of confidence. Jiang Pingji's troops were not limited to one type of soldier. Instead, they were more versatile. The training plan she gave was very complicated and heavy. Every troop's food was as balanced as possible. These people were supervised by Chief Meng Hun to train hard. They had a certain degree of night fighting ability. Many people in ancient times had varying degrees of night blindness because of the unbalanced nutrition of their food. Especially the people who were born into poverty, they often had no food to fill their stomachs during natural disasters and droughts. Not to mention the pursuit of balanced nutrition. The proportion of people with night blindness was very high. Since Jiang Pingji was determined to conquer the 9 states and pursue the position of hegemon, how could she not do anything? She did not waste the 3 years she spent in Langyi. Fighting at night, the enemy weakened while we strengthened. 1,000 troops could unleash a considerable combat power. Luo Yue led the Imperial Guards to help the troops clean up the battlefield. This time the troops contributed the most to killing the Xingyi army. The Imperial Guards, on the other hand, were like decorations. He took the initiative to look for Jiang Pingji and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Jiang Pingji said, "Of course there is. I've entrusted the safety of tens of thousands of people to you." Luo Yue opened his mouth a few times. He wanted to join in the attack at night, but the words were stuck on the tip of his tongue and he could not say it. She led her troops to charge and kill the enemy. His Imperial Guards would protect them from behind. Anyone with a discerning eye would know which side was safer. Jiang Pingji looked at Luo Yue and asked with concern, "Is there anything else?" Luo Yue shook his head and said, "No, I won't disturb you anymore." The corpses of 3,000 members of the Xingyi army were moved to the entrance of the mountain, covered with dry and flammable straw and burned to ashes. Jiang Pingji ordered her men to burn the corpses and clean them up. No one objected. There was no need to pay too much attention to the enemy's corpse. Now that it was a hot summer day, the corpses would easily attract mosquitoes and flies, and they would rot very quickly. If they were not dealt with as soon as possible, there would be an epidemic. Lang Jun had emphasized it again and again, so naturally no one would argue with her. When they set up camp on the spot and cleaned up the battlefield, they found a few horses on the side of the Xingyi army. However, these horses were either dead or seriously injured. Jiang Pingji ordered people to slaughter these horses and boil them into meat soup. She then sent it to the people who cooperated with them. The commoners were still in shock. To be honest, they were not very willing to be bait. After all, they were risking their lives. However, when they found out that the troops had cooked food for them after setting up camp, and even slaughtered horses to make meat soup, and that the people who had been fighting for the whole afternoon were still hungry. For a moment, many people's eyes turned red, and the little bit of resentment in their hearts disappeared, and they couldn't help but feel ashamed. Jiang Pingji, on the other hand, did not have much emotion. She took the meat porridge from the troops and gulped it down. In ancient times, seasonings were very scarce. Now that they were on the march, they brought some salt at most, but it really didn't taste very good. However, there was nothing to be picky about. Even Feng Jin, a serious aristocrat, did not complain, so Jiang Pingji would not complain. Qiguan Rang had already brought the remaining people to meet up with Jiang Pingji. Rang saw the flames from afar. "I think Lang Jun won a big victory this time." Qiguan Rang no longer looked like a refined scholar. The wooden clogs on his feet had been replaced by thick straw sandals. His clothes had also become brown, which made it easier for him to move. His black hair was tied up with hemp rope made of straw. Except for his temperament, he looked like a farmer. Indeed, thanks to the enemy's stupidity, we won with ease. Jiang Pingji got up and hung the broadsword on her waist. She also picked 2 short swords that were 1 foot long and placed them in a convenient position. The broadsword was usually hung in the room as a decoration. Today she finally used it to kill the enemy. Qiguanrang handed Jiang Pingji a bow and a quiver of arrows. Langjun, you must be careful tonight. If anything happened to her, everyone present would probably break up and their future would be bleak. Just wait for my good news. Jiang Pingji smiled, took the bow and arrows and carried them on her back. The quiver was also filled with arrows. Her long hair was tied into a ponytail with a hair tie and then tied with a cloth. She looked elegant and neat. Looking at her current attire, she was like a free and easy ranger who walked out of a street story instead of a well-read scholar. Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of something and added a sentence. Oh yes, the 3,000 members of the Xingyi army were all buried here. They may have sent people out of the city to investigate. Be careful of a night attack. Qiguanrang could see the flames rising from the call from afar. It was hard to guarantee that the Xingyi army in the city did not notice. It was better to be safe than sorry. Since Jiang Pingji brought the people of Shangjing out, she had the responsibility to ensure their safety. Qiguanrang solemnly bowed with his hands folded in front. Don't worry, Langjun. I swear to guard this place with my life and quietly wait for your good news. With the few of you guarding the rear, I definitely won't worry. Jiang Pingji certainly could not bring the few literati along for the night attack. She might as well let them lead 1,000 imperial guards to protect the people. The terrain here was higher and they could see in all directions. If the Xingyi army tried to launch a sneak attack, they could rely on the terrain to resist for a long time. Troops depart. When the sun gradually set in the west, the hot wind gradually cooled. Jiang Pingji and the others could already see the tall city walls. In another place, the Xingyi army guarding the city had long noticed the unusual smoke in the distance and informed General Jiu about it. General Jiu held a banquet in the district magistrate's residence for the meritorious officials. He drank wine and ate meat in big mouthfuls. He watched beautiful women dance. If he was excited, he would directly pull one into his arms for fun. The entire hall was filled with the fragrance of wine and meat as well as the smell of lust. Even from afar, one could hear the rough and unbridled laughter of the men and the trembling pleas of the women. What's the big deal? General Jiu was bare-chested, revealing his muscular upper body. He held a beauty in his left hand and took a bite of a thick drumstick in his right hand. He said nonchalantly, "It's so hot these days. Isn't it normal for fires to start anywhere?" The Xingyi army soldier who reported opened his mouth and said hesitantly, "The deputy general who left the city in the afternoon hasn't returned yet." General Jiu sneered. "Why are you so worried? Maybe they'll achieve a complete victory and divide the spoils. They all came from the same bandit nest." He knew the deputy general's greedy temperament very well. The soldier who reported wanted to say something, but General Jiu became impatient and threw the chicken drumstick in his hand at his face. "Get lost. Don't be an eyesore here." Not long after, the hall resumed its original lively atmosphere. Chapter 409. The golden crow fell and dyed the sky orange. The sky gradually darkened and there were no torches on the city wall yet. Jiang Pingji led the troops to lie in ambush outside the city, calmly waiting for the right time to strike. A sense of dreariness pressed down on everyone's hearts. Facing the cold, kind, and honest Meng Hun, the troops still dared to joke with him after they had completed their training. The overall atmosphere was not very solemn. However, Jiang Pingji was the leader this time. She did not say any unnecessary words, nor did she deliberately show her majesty with a straight face. She only needed to glance at the troops with her calm eyes, and they could not help but straighten their backs and tense their nerves. After a long time, some of them came back to their senses and were shocked to find that their palms were sweating nervously. Different generals bring out different soldiers. This saying was indeed true. Jiang Pingji looked up at the sky. The moon might not be too bright tonight. You stay here. I will go and clean up the sentries on the city wall. Pay attention to the ambush and don't expose yourself. Jiang Pingji measured the distance between the city wall and the city wall with her eyes and began to calculate the safest route in her mind. Her dark eyes seemed to brighten a little. The troops wanted to intercept her, but Meng Hun did not agree. After all, it was too dangerous. As Jiang Pingji's private troops, they could not let her get hurt even if they all died here. Jiang Pingji glanced at the troops and sneered. "Look carefully. As a member of the loose troop, you know what you should do. Real elite troops are not qualified by holding a modified crossbow." She took 2 bundles of ropes and stomped on the ground. Her body was agile and light, and her speed was even more astonishing. Like the most agile black cat, she freely shuttled through the shadows that were getting darker and darker. Seeing her desperate move, everyone in the troop held their breath nervously, and their hearts were in their throats. The expected exposure did not happen. They had been through years of systematic training, so they more or less knew the trick. Jiang Pingji arrived at the city gate with ease. She used both her hands to accurately find a foothold. Her body stuck to the wall like a gecko and she climbed up easily. In less than 2 breaths she had already climbed half of the way up. Everyone in the troop was stunned. Because of the distance, they could only see a black shadow moving quickly up the city wall. But there was no doubt that it was their Langjun. Although the current city walls were mostly made of stones and sand and were not smooth and seamless, it was extremely difficult for her to climb it as easily as if she was walking on flat ground. They widened their eyes nervously, and the audience in the live broadcast room did not dare to use bullet screens. According to the situation of Xiangyang district's city walls, many modern rock climbers could easily climb up. However, this was a battlefield. If they were discovered by the enemy, they would be shot by arrows in the next second. Who could maintain their composure and perform normally under the threat of high pressure? The city walls of Xiangyang district were much shorter than those of Shangjing district. They were not built as neatly and luxuriously. Jiang Pingji did not expend much effort. Sigh. A member of the Xingyi army who was standing guard nearby yawned. 2 drops of physiological tears squeezed out from the corners of his eyes. Before he could close his mouth, a chill flashed across his neck. Even before the pain could reach his brain, he was already dead. When Jiang Pingji killed the soldier of the Xingyi army, she flipped over the city wall. At the same time, she hooked her long leg and threw him off the tower. Puff! The corpse fell off the city wall. Not only was there mud, but there was also lush grass. The sound of the corpse falling was not loud. It was the time to be sleepy. The members of the Xingyi army had been standing guard for a long time. Their reflexes were slower and they could not react at all. Jiang Pingji just stepped onto the city wall. She took out her longbow with one hand and knocked 3 arrows with the other. Puff, puff, puff. 3 sounds were heard almost at the same time. The arrows pierced through the neck from the side and pierced the trachea. Following that, the 3 corpses of the Xingyi army fell. They did not make any sound before they died. However, the sound of the corpses falling still alerted the members of the Xingyi army who were standing guard. Jiang Pingji turned over and rolled over. She hid in the shadow formed by the teeth of the wall. It was darker there than other places. What's that sound? Due to the darkening night sky, he did not see clearly what happened. He only realized that the figure 3 feet away from him had disappeared. Just as he took a step forward, something seemed to fall from the archer tower in the distance. He carefully widened his eyes and felt a pain in his throat. An arrow appeared strangely in front of his eyes. His brain did not have time to think about how the arrow came about. His vision turned black and the world spun. Jiang Pingji muttered to herself, "There aren't many archer towers." She swiftly killed the sentries on the 2 archer towers and then dealt with the members of the Xingyi army on the city wall with peace of mind. Jiang Pingji's brain was like a machine that operated according to its condition. She calmly calculated and analyzed the surrounding enemies and their locations. Her assassination speed was frighteningly fast. There was bound to be blood when she attacked. At least 1 life was taken. Within 5 or 6 breaths, the members of the Xingyi army on the city wall had been wiped out by her alone. The audience in the streaming room counted the number of people who had died. They felt their hair stand on end. Jiang Pingji's breathing was still calm. It was impossible to tell that she had killed more than 40 people in a row. She tied 2 bundles of rope to the battlement of the wall and put them down. At that moment, the troops had already started moving. They quickly climbed up the city wall along the ropes. Because Jiang Pingji could only carry a limited amount of rope, the troops who climbed up followed her method to tie new ropes and put them down. Not long after, more than 200 troops had climbed up the city wall. At that moment, the sun had completely set. In another quarter of an hour, it was time to change shifts on the city wall and light up the torches. Jiang Pingji made a few hand gestures. The troops understood. She did not go down the city wall using the stairs. Instead, she pulled a rope and landed quickly in the shadows. Oh! After a short, soft groan, Jiang Pingji broke the necks of the guards at the city gate with her bare hands. She hid their bodies in the shadows of the city entrance. She opened the bolt of the city gate and let the rest of the troops in. Because of the atrocities committed by the Xingyi army, the people did not dare to go out at night. They were afraid that they would lose their lives if they met the mob. The streets were empty. Just as Suku said, there were more than 10,000 members of the Xingyi army in Xianxia district. It seemed like a lot, but they were divided to guard the various city gates. The troops were scattered and could not be gathered in a short time. They were not a threat at all. Jiang Pingji led the troops into the city without losing a single person. Of course, the ease in the early stage did not mean that the attack would be successful. Follow me. Jiang Pingji waved her hand. She planned to attack the district headquarters of Xiangyang district directly. After they left, the Xingyi army who arrived late finally discovered the corpses on the city wall and the ropes on the battlement. The enemy attack at the west city gate. A scream of terror broke the silence of the night. When the Xingyi army rushed to the west city gate, Jiang Pingji had already divided her troops into two groups. Chapter 4:10. Feng Jin was right when he said that Jiang Pingji had a strong gambler's mentality. She and Meng Hun split up. In fact, she only brought 50 people with her. The rest of the 900 troops were led by Meng Hun. They were lying in ambush along the only way to the west gate. If Feng Jin knew that she dared to attack the district headquarters with only 50 people, he might faint from anger. The audience in the streaming room did not know whether Feng Jin would faint from anger, but they felt that their hearts could not take it anymore. They knew that the streamer was bold, but they never thought that she would be so bold as to take a detour and attack the district headquarters. Streamer V. To catch bandits, first capture the ringleader. Although I always think this is nonsense, people in this era fall for it. If it was in Jiang Pingji's era, not to mention capture the ringleader, even if a commander died in battle, the soldiers would not stop fighting without an order to stop the war. As the leader, the commander was indeed their belief, but it was not their only belief. Inyang Kuaixin. But, what if the leader of the Xingyi army is not in the district headquarters? As soon as the bullet screen was posted, it was immediately drowned by the audience's bullet screen. Lao Siji Lianmeng. Damn, don't say such things at a time like this. It's scary. Shoujiji Bao. Ba ba ba. Don't say such things. It's inauspicious. Qingshan Lei Luo. Don't say such things. If it comes true and the streamer dies, what will happen to those who are waiting to get clean? The streamer's streaming room has saved countless teenagers, young people and middle-aged people who have gone astray. When Jiang Pingji's streaming room first appeared, no one believed in the so-called time travel. However, as time went by, the streaming room became very popular. It even caused a viewing craze. However, the number of people in the streaming room was limited. Every slot was extremely precious. Before the streaming room appeared, time travel and a different world were terms in novels. Now that their dreams had come true, one could imagine how attractive it was. Many people could not get a slot in the streaming room, so they could only go to a special official website to watch the recorded videos. Some time ago, a foreign student became a hot topic because of the streaming room. The reason was that he had been thinking about the streaming room day and night. He had unexpectedly quit his stubborn drug addiction. Watching the streaming room and quitting drug addiction had become a well-known meme. Jiang Pingji chuckled. She was now at ease. Not only was her movement unhindered, but she even had the energy to look through the bullet screen. Host V. There must be a big fish in the district headquarters. Didn't you notice that Xiangyang district is pitch black at night? Every household doesn't light up their lights. It's not that they are too poor to afford it, but it's because they don't dare to. The only place that's lit up is the district headquarters of Xiangyang district. Most families would only be willing to light their lanterns after nightfall. Those who lit their lanterns before the night was completely dark usually had two reasons. They were rich and willful and their family did not lack the money for the lanterns, or they were hosting a banquet for a reason. Jiang Pingji had taken a look at the situation in the city from the top of the city wall. The district headquarters was brightly lit, and the light could be seen from afar. Thinking about the behavior of the Xingyi army and General Jiu's face, it was not difficult to deduce. Therefore, she took a gamble that there was a big fish in the county government. The audience expressed, "That's great. Host, you're so willful. Aren't you afraid of being criticized by the strategists when you get back?" Kojiao Chifan. Sai, let me give you a suggestion. In the future, the host's subordinates shouldn't call you lord, they should call you little princess. Willfulness is a problem that even a real princess can't catch up to. When the bullet screen popped up, the copy party copied it excitedly. The screen full of little princesses gave Jiang Pingji goosebumps. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu. If you don't want to burn incense at the host's grave on next year's Qingming festival, don't send bullet screens to distract her. Why are the audience making trouble at such a tense moment? His words were useful. The bullet screen slowly decreased until the screen was clear. At that moment, Jiang Pingji and the rest were close to the district headquarters. The news of an enemy attack at the west gate had just reached there. She sneered and drew her bow. She shot an informant who was about to speak. The guard at the entrance of the district headquarters was about to listen to what the informant had to say. In the next second he saw an arrow piercing through his neck. The sharpened arrowhead was dripping with blood. The informant's eyes were wide open and his eyeballs were about to pop out of his eye sockets. He died with an expression of disbelief. When the guard saw that, he gathered his qi in his dantian and wanted to shout that the enemy was attacking. However, before he could say, enemy, his heart and brain were pierced. At that moment the patrolling guard heard the commotion and walked over. He barely managed to shout the word, enemy, before he followed his companion's footsteps. Jiang Pingji led her troops over the wall. There were many members of the Xingyi army in the courtyard. She sneered and put away her long bow. She pulled out the sword at her waist. Whether it was close combat or long-range assassination, how could these ordinary people who were forced to do something beyond their abilities be her match? Jiang Pingji rushed to the front. The blade of her long sword drew a silver-white light in the air. Then it brought about a spray of blood. The perspective of the audience in the streaming room followed Jiang Pingji's movements. While they were excited, they were terrified by Jiang Pingji's ruthlessness. In the past, when they watched television dramas, the main character killed a person with a sword. At most, the main character would cut a wound on the person's chest. Then the person would die. However, Jiang Pingji was not acting. How could a shallow wound like the one in the television dramas be fatal? With one slash of her sword, the person's body was directly cut into two. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was cutting melons and vegetables. The audience could not imagine how much strength she used. The audience in the streaming room could not imagine it. The troops following her did not even dare to think about it. Jiang Pingji's sword was fast and accurate. Every slash was aimed at the enemy's lifeline. With one slash, the person's brain or upper body was directly cut into two. Not only did blood stain the blade of her sword, but it also washed her hands, clothes and face into the color of blood. Enemy attack. Enemy. Stop these thieves. The Xingyi army in the district headquarters shouted loudly while they tried to stop the approaching people. Without exception, their bodies were cut into pieces. It was just the distance from the main gate to the entrance. The courtyard was already filled with 40 to 50 corpses. The Xingyi army members who were killed with one slash were basically killed by Jiang Pingji. The corpses looked intact, but those who were lying on the ground struggling for a while before they breathed their last were the work of the troops. No matter how sharp a sword was, the strength needed to cut a person into two with one slash was extremely terrifying. If the sword did not cut the person in half with one slash, the muscles would still be firmly attached to the blade. It could not be pulled out or slashed into the body. It was equivalent to a useless weapon. However, Jiang Pingji did not have this concern. It was not because of how sharp her sword was, but because she was strong enough. Even if it was a blunt sword, she could still cut the person's head and body apart. Along the way, she killed along the way. The troops cooperated closely with each other. In addition, Jiang Pingji, the meat grinder, was clearing the way in front. Surprisingly, no one was killed or injured. In the hall, General Zhou was a little drunk. His subordinates were hugging beauties and swaying from side to side. Hearing the noise outside, General Zhou shook his head and pushed away the beauty lying on his lap. He suppressed his displeasure and scolded the people outside. What happened? Why is it so noisy outside? No one answered, but the paper door clearly showed the panicked figures, revealing everything. Chapter 4:11. General Zhou stood up abruptly. He was nearly 8 feet tall and he was as burly as a mountain of flesh. The veins on his arms and forehead bulged. He snorted. His rough face looked slightly ferocious. He grabbed 2 huge copper hammers with both hands. At that moment, the other subordinates in the hall came to their senses one after another. They vaguely noticed the movement outside. One by one, they could not care less about the warm and fragrant bodies. They grabbed a handful of clothes and put them on. However, they had drunk too much and fooled around for too long. Their legs were still a little weak. General Zhou pushed open the door with great force. Coincidentally, a human head flew to his feet and rolled twice. He looked down. The head was revealed to be facing him. A pair of lifeless eyes were wide open, making one's hair stand on end. "Yo, it's really a big fish." At that moment he heard a mocking voice. General Zhou glared at her angrily. Jiang Pingji had been fighting continuously. Her entire body was stained with sticky blood. Her original appearance could not be seen. At that moment she no longer had the elegance of a gentry in her usual green robes. She was full of ferocity and anger. She was like a ferocious ghost that had crawled out of hell. "Who are you? I don't kill nameless people." General Zhou was still full of confidence because he could see that Jiang Pingji did not bring many people with her. Jiang Pingji's figure and height were very confusing. In many people's opinion, the bullier the body, the greater the strength and the greater the lethality. According to this standard, Jiang Pingji should be a paper doll that could be blown away by the wind. There was nothing to fear. Naturally, he would not really take her seriously. Compared to Jiang Pingji, he was more concerned about the circle of people around her. Each of them was an expert in fighting and killing. Jiang Pingji spat out a mouthful of blood and revealed a wanton and evil smile. A trace of scarlet seemed to flash in her eyes. She did not speak. Instead, she stepped forward and closed the distance between her and General Zhou in an instant. They would start fighting at the slightest disagreement. In a battlefield, who cared about so many tricks? Either you die or you live. General Zhou originally wanted to act pretentious, but he did not expect Jiang Pingji to not play by the rules. She was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He subconsciously raised the giant hammer in his hand to block the sharp blade. Bang! A teeth-numbing sound of impact could be heard. After one strike, an extremely deep mark was left on the copper hammer that was covered with iron thorns. General Zhou was horrified. The web between his thumb and forefinger split open, and viscous scarlet blood oozed out of the wound, dyeing his palm red. Because of this sudden force, he almost lost his grip on the handle of the hammer. Even so, his mountain-like body was shaken and forced to take 3 or 4 steps back. If he hadn't stabilized his center of gravity, he would have fallen to the ground and lost all his face. General Zhou was overwhelmed with shock. Jiang Pingji held her sword with one hand, and her left hand moved as fast as lightning. She pulled out a 1-foot-long sword from her waist. With a poof, the snow-white blade pierced into someone's neck. This person wanted to ambush her when she was not strong enough, but he did not expect to lose his life first. General Zhou was forced to retreat. In the time it took for him to stabilize his center of gravity, Jiang Pingji had taken 2 lives in a row. "Everyone charge. Take him down." Even though General Zhou was a bandit and had committed countless crimes, how could he compare to Jiang Pingji? In the face of Jiang Pingji's irresistible attack, even General Zhou could not help but cower. A few of his subordinates also wanted to take down Jiang Pingji with their advantage in numbers and make a great contribution. After all, she had already left the protection of the troops and entered their encirclement. However, sometimes strength and numbers had nothing to do with each other. Even if General Zhou had more people than Jiang Pingji, it was useless. She was not afraid to fight against 100 people alone. It was as if she had eyes on her back. The sneak attacks of the people did not work at all. The sword in her hand was more like the scythe of the king of Hades. One stab into the heart, temple or neck and a person's life was easily taken. General Zhou had nowhere to retreat, so he raised his 2 huge hammers and aimed them at her head. However, she suddenly flipped backward and exerted strength in her feet at the same time. Her body slid backward like a fish, and the horizontal blade in her right hand slashed at General Zhou's knees with great force, cutting off both of his legs. With one hand on the ground, she kicked the wrist of the sneak attacker with both feet, then turned around and stood firm. Holding the sword in her left hand, she slashed at General Zhou's thick neck. Blood splattered. Before the head fell to the ground, she grabbed the hair bun. Blood spurted from the wound and dyed the ground red. General Zhou's eyes were still bulging out of their sockets. His expression was one of shock and horror. As for his body, both of his knees were intercepted and chopped off. His head was separated from his body. The rest of his body fell to the ground with a thud. Jiang Pingji stood in the hall, holding General Jiu's head with her right hand and shouting loudly. The enemy has been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who still wanted to attack were mercilessly killed by her. The others had lost their will to fight. They were almost scared out of their wits. They could only put down their weapons unwillingly. At that moment, the silent streaming room suddenly exploded with countless bullet screens. Seeing that Jiang Pingji was surrounded by the enemy, the audience in the streaming room felt their hearts in their throats. They almost forgot to breathe. Seeing that she was agile and able to deal with the enemies with ease, they could not help but cheer for her. Some of them were so excited that their faces turned red. Even when they watched the most exciting martial arts movies, they had never enjoyed such a hot-blooded and exciting visual enjoyment. That was because they knew that no matter how real the movie was, it was still fake. Everything in the streaming room was real. Jiang Pingji was fighting a war. It was like walking on a tightrope high up in the sky. If she was not careful, she would fall into hell. She did not want to be beheaded by the enemy, so she could only chop off the enemy's head. From the entrance of the district headquarters to the hall, there were corpses with severed limbs and broken bones. Blood flowed all over the ground. The strong smell of blood filled everyone's nostrils. Those members of the Xingyi army who were lucky enough to survive laid down their weapons and surrendered. They no longer had the will to fight. Just before Jiang Pingji led her people to attack the district headquarters, Meng Hun had also begun the battle. The members of the Xingyi army near the west gate heard the news and rushed over. More and more people came. They did not expect that after the sneak attack at the city gate, the enemy did not leave the area. Instead, they sent a large number of troops to lie in ambush and wait for them to fall into the trap. Archery was a compulsory course for every troop. They spent at least 2 hours a day specially training in this subject. They trained hard every day. The sighting device on the improved crossbows was continuously improved to help them increase the accuracy of their shots. Under such conditions, the troops could not be considered as godly archers, but they could shoot wherever they pointed. Their accuracy was more than 90%. Now their target was not the moving heads of the Xingyi army, but Meng Hun gestured for the troops to hold their swords. The arrows shot out and the torches of the Xingyi army fell to the ground. In the alley there were only sporadic flames. The area that the flames illuminated was limited. Everything else was shrouded in darkness. The sudden darkness caused many members of the Xingyi army to panic. In the next second, what awaited them was a torrent of arrows. Not only there, the same scene was playing out in other places. The blood-curdling screams of the members of the Xingyi army before they died reverberated to the sky. There were people who were shot and fell. Not long after, the ground was covered with the corpses of the members of the Xingyi army. After a few rounds of shooting, the ambush spots of the troops were also exposed. The blood-curdling screams attracted more enemies. To avoid increasing casualties, Meng Hun saw the situation and ordered them to retreat while fighting. Retreat for now. A strategic retreat was for the sake of greater victory and minimizing casualties. Chapter 4:12. Jiang Pingji had mentioned before that most of the people in this era had night blindness. Most of the Xingyi army were blind in the dark without torches. In the eyes of the troops, a group of blind people were just moving human targets. Where did they go? Have you found them? No. Have the thieves escaped? Go over there and look for them. Where are the thieves? Report back as soon as you have any news. The Xingyi army rushed over and held up their torches, illuminating the area as if it was daytime. However, apart from hundreds of corpses, there was no trace of the enemy. The Xingyi army was in a panic. While they were angry, they had an uncontrollable fear of the elusive enemy. Meng Hun smiled when he saw the Xingyi army rushing over in batches. He ordered them to continue the ambush, load the crossbows and take aim. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the darkness, the deadly arrows roared out. This time they did not aim at the torches but at the heads of the Xingyi army. Poof! The dead did not even have time to scream. A deathly chill spread from the soles of their feet to their whole bodies, and they fell limp to the ground. They are here. Someone noticed the movement and was about to shout a warning, but he did not want to follow in the footsteps of his companions. The range of the improved crossbows gave the troops a great advantage in long-range attacks. The sky was even darker that night. The moon was shrouded in thick dark clouds. They were lying in ambush in the dark and they were so far away. The Xingyi army could not touch them at all. Could be said that the troops had the upper hand. After a few ambushes, the corpses lying in the alleys had piled up. The blood that flowed out converged into a stream, flowing along the cracks of the stone slabs. The night wind blew, bringing with it a strong smell of rust. It told of the tragic battle that had happened here. The Xingyi army kept rushing over and they kept dying. The number of the dead kept increasing. Under such a strong threat of death, many people were on the verge of a mental breakdown and lost their cool. They used to be honest people with hoes, but now they were instigated to pick up choppers and shoulder poles. They became violent mobs. However, their happy life had not lasted for a few days. The soul-reaping envoys came and took away their people one by one. Soon it would be their turn. Seeing that the arrows in his quiver had been exhausted, Meng Hun spat out a mouthful of saliva and pulled out the broadsword from his waist. With a ferocious look in his eyes, he jumped down from the eaves with his saber in hand. Go! A blood-curdling scream was heard. A member of the Xingyi army's head was split into two halves from top to bottom. His brain juice and blood splattered everywhere. Meng Hun unsheathed his sword and slashed at another member of the Xingyi army without stopping. Behind him, more troops rushed forward. For a time, the alley was in a chaotic battle, and shrill cries resounded without stopping. Directly drawing a sword to fight was not as fast as long-range shooting, but it was undoubtedly more tragic. The troops knew how to cooperate in battle, while the Xingyi army was like headless flies. They did not even have any defensive equipment. Even though the Xingyi army outnumbered the troops, the battle situation was still one-sided. How could the people nearby sleep soundly when they heard the murderous cries outside? After the earthquake, the already impoverished Xianxia district was in a state of desolation. Many people died in the earthquake. The people did not have enough food to eat, but the district headquarters did not do anything. Until Xianxia district was conquered, the Xingyi army committed numerous crimes. The people of Xianxia district were already jittery and panicked. Every household shut their doors tightly regardless of whether it was day or night. They refused to step out of their doors. Now that the Xingyi army was in a chaotic battle with an unknown force, many people could only shiver in fear and hide in their homes, blocking the doors tightly. After a quarter of an hour, the murderous cries gradually subsided, but the smell of blood in the air became stronger. At this moment, excited shouts spread throughout the streets and alleys. The enemy bandits have been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed. The enemy bandits have been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed. The enemy bandits have been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed. The high-pitched voices were like a relay, passing through the mouths of the troops and spreading throughout the entire Xianxia district. Meng Hun, who was already in a killing frenzy, heard this and pulled out his sword from the heart of a corpse. Not only him but most of the troops had already lost track of time. This exciting news reached their ears and pulled them back to their senses. After calming down, many of them realized that their arms were already sore and powerless. Their muscles were swollen, causing their skin to ache. Some of the troops panted heavily, feeling carefree as if they had escaped death. Some of them even sat on the ground in exhaustion, not caring how much blood there was on the ground. Most of them were injured and wounded, but compared to death, these minor injuries were nothing. At this moment, there were only a few members of the Xingyi army who were still standing. Most of them were either dead or seriously injured, struggling at death's door. As for those who were still on their way, upon hearing that General Zhou had been beheaded, they were at a loss at first, then they threw down their weapons and ran away. Of course, there were still more than 1,000 people who were captured in the end. These people were the spoils of war. Meng Hun composed himself and said to the troops beside him, "Clean up the battlefield, bandage the injured brothers' wounds. As for the brothers who died in battle, remember to collect their corpses so that they can be buried in peace in the future." These troops were not only Jiang Pingji's private troops, but also the children that Meng Hun had raised. He had spent years of painstaking effort on the troops. Losing one person made him feel as if a knife was twisting his heart. But as a general, he understood that it was an honor to be born a general and die on the battlefield. Meng Hun waved his sword expressionlessly, flung the blood on the blade to the ground, then sheathed it. He needed to meet up with Lang Jun as soon as possible to stabilize the situation, lest the remnants of the Xingyi army counterattack. At this moment, more than 50 troops led by Jiang Pingji had already occupied the district headquarters. guarding the entrance and all the important crossings. When everyone saw Meng Hun and his men coming, they all saluted. Meng Hun asked, "Is Lang Jun all right?" The two guards said with admiration, "Lang Jun is fine, he is waiting for you in the hall." Meng Hun nodded, took a deep breath and stepped into the gate. The district headquarters was still as bright as day, the candles had not burned out and the cold, bloodied corpses were still lying on the ground, no one collecting them. He did not look at them, directly walked over the broken bodies and went straight ahead. Jiang Pingji sat in the seat of honor. General Jiu's head was placed on one side, his eyes were still open and he died with a grievance. The room was full of blood, with the luxurious decorations and the unfinished food and wine on the dining table, which seemed out of place. The audience in the streaming room kept wanting to talk to Jiang Pingji, and the bullet screen was flooded, but she was still indifferent. Since the situation in the district headquarters was stabilized, she sat in the seat of honor as if she was waiting for someone. Meng Hun strode to Jiang Pingji and suddenly knelt down in front of her, his voice like thunder. Chapter 413. Chu, your subject Chu Xiu pays respect to the Lord. Lao Siji Lianming, your subject Wan Jixing pays respect to the Lord. Kojiao Qi Fan, your subject Lu Fongfong pays respect to the Lord. Feather Dang Dio Kingshan, your subject Mo Mao Mao pays respect to the Lord. When Meng Hun knelt before Jiang Pingji and addressed her as his lord, the streaming room went wild. Countless viewers agreed with him. They all knew that it was a room for harem fights. The streamer had said that she refused to fight in the harem and was determined to rule the throne. But a few years had passed and she had not done anything. Many viewers even thought that Jiang Pingji was just boasting. Meng Hun's actions were undoubtedly a sign. From that night onwards, their streamer was ready to ascend to the heavens. Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a smile. Her cold face became a little warmer. She helped Meng Hun up and said, "You've worked hard tonight." Meng Hun stood up and couldn't help but grin, revealing a set of snow-white teeth. "That's not right, my lord. If we were to talk about who contributed the most in this siege, it would be my lord. I don't dare to take it all for myself." Meng Hun felt that night was the most carefree since he had rebelled against the Mengs. He felt like he had come back to life and his blood was boiling. Even though he was covered in blood and there was a lingering stench at the tip of his nose, he felt extremely comfortable from head to toe. If it was someone else, they might think that Meng Hun was just flattering her. But Jiang Pingji knew that he admired her from the bottom of his heart. The smile on his lips deepened and his eyes were filled with warmth. "No one can take away the credit that belongs to you." The head was to be hung on the city wall. Wen Zheng and the rest will understand when they see it. As she said that, she lifted her leg and kicked General Jiu's head. The head rolled down like a rubber ball. Meng Hun nodded and said, "I'll do it now." "How many prisoners of the Tsing-Yi army do we have?" Jiang Pingji stopped Meng Hun and said, "I don't know how many troops were killed in this attack. Including the 1,000 imperial guards under Coach Liu Yue, there are at most 2,000. The Tsing-Yi army can't even defend the city with 10,000 men, let alone the few of us. If there are members of the Tsing-Yi army who are willing to surrender, we can consider incorporating them into the army for the time being. Stabilizing the situation is the most important." Meng Hun looked a little embarrassed. He felt that the number of captives this time was probably less than 2,000. There were more than 10,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army. 3,000 of them were lured out of the city during the day and all of them were annihilated on the Longhu boardwalk. Jiang Pingji led more than 50 troops and killed close to 500 members of the Tsing-Yi army. He divided his troops and led other troops to ambush the Tsing-Yi army near the west gate. He estimated that 3,000 of them were annihilated. After General Jiu was beheaded, another group was scared away. Based on this calculation, the remaining members of the Tsing-Yi army who were captured did not exceed 2,000. Seeing his expression, Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. She said, "It's just a temporary incorporation to keep up appearances." Meng Hun said, "Putting up a front?" "Yes, although Xiangyang district has been conquered, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be a second group of Tsing-Yi army coming to cause trouble. We need manpower now. When the situation in Xiangyang district stabilizes, I plan to recruit soldiers again. The selection criteria will be stricter. The quality of the soldiers is more important than the quantity. If I want to nurture, I will nurture elite soldiers." Meng Hun understood what Jiang Pingji meant and felt relieved. Then how does my lord plan to deal with the corpses of the bandits? After experiencing the earthquake in Shangjing, Meng Hun had some taboos about corpses. He was afraid that if the corpses decomposed, they would cause an epidemic or pollute the water source. Jiang Pingji replied without raising her brows, directly transport them outside the city and burn them. Special times call for special treatment. We don't have enough manpower. After taking over Xiangyang district, there are still many things to do. How can we have extra manpower to bury them? Now that the weather is hot, the corpses will rot easily if left for a long time. It's better to deal with them as soon as possible. Remember to transport them to a remote place and deal with them. Meng Hun did not have much objection to burning them. After all, they were the corpses of his enemies. Oh yes, get someone to get you some water and treat the wounds on your body. Otherwise, when the wounds fester, you'll suffer for nothing. Jiang Pingji was skilled. Although she looked disheveled and was covered in blood, the blood belonged to others. Meng Hun belonged to the category of a normal person. Moreover, it was a chaotic battle in the middle of the night. He was ferocious and fearless and fought bravely. His arms, shoulder blades, lower back and other places had additional wounds. If they were not treated properly, when the wounds fester or become infected, it would be troublesome. After Meng Hun heard this, his heart warmed. He said, "Thank you for your concern, my lord." Meng Hun carried General Jiu's head and walked to the door. He summoned a troop and asked him to hang the head on the west city gate. Send 100 more people to guard the district headquarters and protect my lord's safety. Everyone must be alert tonight. Don't be careless. Although half of the Tsing-Yi army in Xiangyang district had been destroyed, the possibility of them making a comeback could not be ruled out. Yes. On the other side, Jiang Pingji's tense nerves relaxed. She had no intention of resting. It was destined to be a sleepless night. She did not deal with her image. Instead, she attracted someone. Where are all the women in the hall? The troop blushed and said, Langjun, do you want to see them? Jiang Pingji raised her brows and said, Call me lord. The troop quickly changed his address and asked again, Do you want to see them? Yes. Jiang Pingji nodded. When she rushed in, she not only noticed General Jiu and the others, but also noticed more than 20 disheveled women in the hall. At that time, the situation was too chaotic. Jiang Pingji did not care about their safety. Now that they had settled down, she should arrange a place for them to go. The troops were a group of men. Even if they had strict discipline above their heads, it was hard to guarantee that no one would be tempted by them. After all, most of the troops were bandits. Jiang Pingji knew very well what bandits were like. Not long after, the women who were locked up in the small woodshed in the side hall were brought over. Every one of them was covered in dust. Some of them were silent, some were trembling, and some were expressionless like walking puppets. Jiang Pingji sat upright in the seat of honor. The women recognized her. Thinking of her ruthlessness when she killed people, they became more and more timid. My lord, I have brought them here. Jiang Pingji glanced at all the women and then shifted her gaze to the troop. She asked in a flat tone, Did you bully them? The troop's face turned pale and he said in a low voice, We didn't bully them. It's just that when we pushed and shoved, we inevitably touched them a little. The internal discipline of the troops was strict. Whoever dared to violate it would have severe consequences. They still had a sense of propriety. However, all adult men had some physiological needs. Jiang Pingji was not unreasonable. She did not expect these people to be monks who cultivated in seclusion and had few desires. In order to solve this conflict, she informed Meng Hun that each troop could take a day off every month. They were free to allocate the day's time. As long as they did not kill, fight, or violate the disciplinary rules, she did not care about anything else. Of course, if they violated the rules she set, the consequences would be absolutely miserable. You're quite honest. You can leave. Search the district headquarters and see if there are any thicker clothes. Bring them to them. The young man hurriedly left as if he had been pardoned. After he went out, he secretly raised his hand to wipe his forehead and let out a long sigh of relief. Chapter 4:14. Now only Jiang Pingji and the pitiful women were left in the hall. The first thing she said was, I'm not interested in you. You don't have to be so scared. Regardless of the women's reactions, the audience in the streaming room was about to kneel down before her. Streamer, are you comforting them or scaring them? Labor income tax. I think it's a threat. Lao Ciji Lianming. There's nothing wrong with what the streamer said. She's a woman. Of course she's not interested in women. The audience in the streaming room knew that Jiang Pingji was a woman who was more manly than men. However, the women who were hurt did not know that. Which family are you from? I'll send someone to escort you home tomorrow morning. Even after she said that, the women below still did not move. They just lowered their heads quietly. Some of them were still trembling. Jiang Pingji frowned. If you refuse to speak, I'll tacitly agree that you want to stay. You also know what will happen to a beautiful woman if she stays with a group of men. Do you still want to remain silent and refuse to return to your loved ones? At that moment, a young girl who was about 15 or 16 knelt down with a thud. She said with red eyes, sobbing, I'm the daughter of a wealthy merchant. Those beasts killed my whole family. Now I'm the only one left. How do you expect me to return? I'll never agree to stay and let them trample on me. I only ask that you take pity on me and give me a quick death. When there was a first, there would naturally be a second. Then another woman knelt down to plead. Slowly all of them knelt on the ground. Compared to General Jiu's ferocious and scary appearance, Jiang Pingji was slender and harmless. Even if she was covered in blood, she was more likable than General Jiu. Jiang Pingji rubbed her brows and asked in a dull tone, If you really want to die, why are you still alive? As soon as she said that, everyone's expression changed drastically. The remaining color on their faces faded. How could Jiang Pingji not know what they were thinking? They suspected that she was lying and thought that she did not want to let them go. Her good intentions were twisted and misunderstood by others. She was also depressed. I don't have any ill intentions when I say that. Jiang Pingji spread her hands and said, Since I said I will send someone to send you home, I will definitely do it. The Xingyi army is a mob. They have committed numerous crimes and view human lives as insignificant as ants. However, I am the district magistrate of Xiangyang district personally appointed by the emperor. In the territory of Xiangyang district, you are all citizens under my rule. Why would I hurt you? Alas, if you really don't have a place to go, I'll think of a way to settle you all down. Don't worry, I won't let anyone bully you. As soon as she finished speaking, the expressions of these women became very interesting. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the teenager who killed people like flies was the newly appointed district magistrate of Xiangyang district. The first girl stammered, You are really the county magistrate? Yes. Do I need to show you the emperor's decree? Jiang Pingji asked. The other party shook his head like a rattle drum. His face gradually lost its color and he looked a little embarrassed. If Jiang Pingji was really the district magistrate, she would definitely not force them. In other words, she really wanted to help them. However, they really had no place to go. Jiang Pingji sighed. Stay in the district headquarters for the time being. I'll arrange everything properly, then I'll think of a way to settle you all down. As for the property confiscated by the Xingyi army, if it's true, I'll return it all to you after tidying it up. The crowd said in unison, Thank you, district magistrate. Hualyan supermarket. Streamer. Do you really plan to return their property to them? You must be very short of money and food now, right? Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. Was she such an insatiable person in the eyes of the audience? Streamer V, what I lack now is manpower, not food. She, Jiang Pingji, had not fallen to the point where she needed to snatch the property of an orphan girl. The women were still anxious, but Jiang Pingji's attitude gave them confidence. At that moment, on the two sides of the Longhu boardwalk, Qiguan Rang did not sleep the whole night. He held the feather fan that never left his side and looked into the distance worriedly. It seems that I overestimated the motley crew. He thought that the Xingyi army would launch a sneak attack in the middle of the night. Who knew that there was not even a shadow of the enemy after the second half of the night? Feng Jin covered his face with his sleeves and yawned. If there's still no movement after daybreak, that's good news. Luo Yu looked at Qiguan Rang on his left and Feng Jin on his right. Then he looked at Su Ku, who was frowning so tightly that he could squeeze a mosquito to death. His heart skipped a beat. Keeping watch at night was not the job of a scholar. It was only the second half of the night, but the three of them could not hold on any longer. Luo Yu humbly consulted Feng Jin. Master Huayu, I don't understand what you're saying. Feng Jin said, if there's an enemy attack in the second half of the night, it means that Lang Jun is in trouble. Not only did the Xingyi army hold Lang Jun back, but they also have extra troops to attack the camp at night. On the contrary, if there's still no movement at dawn, Lang Jun is most likely successful. Qiguan Rang waved the feather fan with one hand and fiddled with the bonfire with the other. He said, "Send someone to the west gate to check on the situation." Luo Yu asked, "What situation?" "Check to see if there are heads hanging on the city walls. If it's a stranger's head, Lang Jun will have succeeded. If it's hung..." Qiguan Rang stopped talking. "If that's the case, we have to think of a way out for these people and make proper arrangements for them." Luo Yu's face darkened. He said, "I'll do it now." Seeing Luo Yu walk away, Qiguan Rang asked Su Ku, "What do you think about the possibility of Lang Jun succeeding this time?" Su Ku asked in reply, "How can Wenjing not know about the troops' combat power? The 1,000 troops were all equipped with improved crossbows and handy weapons. This was the project that cost the most among the troops. How could there be no return after spending so much money? If they couldn't even handle 10,000 Xingyi army soldiers, then what was there to do?" The smile on Qiguan Rang's face became more sincere. He said, "Knowing is one thing, but the battlefield is ever-changing. Who can predict everything?" The three of them looked at the bonfire with different thoughts. The night was destined to be difficult. No one was in the mood to sleep. A ray of golden light rose from the east. It burned the morning fog and dispersed the gloomy night sky. Qiguan Rang rubbed his sore eyes and used his tongue to lick his dry lips. He looked calm on the surface, but his heart was already beating like thunder. He stood up straight and looked at the huge city in the distance that was covered by the morning fog. He prayed in his heart. "Report!" A loud shout broke the silence. The three of them clenched their fists. Chapter 4:15. Success. At this moment, these two words appeared in the minds of the three of them. The emotions in their hearts were agitated and difficult to calm down. Feng Jin and Qiguan Rang's performance was considered calm and restrained. They did not have too obvious expressions. Su Ku stood up excitedly. His voice trembled slightly because of his agitation. "Are you sure that the head on the city gate belongs to the bandit leader of the Xingyi army?" The Imperial Guard who reported the news cupped his fist and said, "I specially disguised myself as an ordinary citizen and went to the west city gate of Xiangyang district to investigate. I found that the city gate was already open. The guards on the city gate were not from the Xingyi army but the personal guards of District Magistrate Lu. I was afraid that it was a trap. I wandered around and asked the citizens entering and exiting the city. The head is indeed the bandit leaders." Upon hearing the news, Su Ku heaved a long sigh of relief. The exhaustion from worrying for a whole night came over him. His vision suddenly darkened. He staggered backward involuntarily and almost lost his footing. Fortunately, Qiguan Rang was by his side. He extended his hand and supported him. Only then did he avoid the miserable state of being intimately in contact with the ground. Feng Jin said to Luo Yu, who specially rushed over, "Chief Luo, please give the order to break camp. Lang Jun has just taken over Xiangyang district. I'm afraid the manpower at hand won't be able to control the situation. To prevent the remnants of the Xingyi army from escaping and calling for reinforcements, Chief Luo, please quickly bring people to support." Luo Yu said, "This is what I should do. Master Huayu, you don't have to do this." Knowing that Jiang Pingji had successfully taken over Xiangyang district, the citizens who followed were emotional. Many of them put their palms together and sincerely thanked the gods. Taking over Xiangyang district meant that they would soon have a place to settle down. Perhaps they could take root here from then on. Along the way, Jiang Pingji did not let the people suffer much. However, compared to a wandering life, they preferred a stable and comfortable environment. Packing their luggage, the people followed the Imperial Guards and slowly approached Xiangyang district. Feng Jin slightly tidied up his appearance to make himself look clean and refreshed. Then he climbed into the horse carriage where Wei Jingxian was resting after giving birth. Among the people, Wei Jingxian and her daughter probably had the best days. "I'll lean against and rest for a while." There was only his wife and daughter in the carriage. Feng Jin was really exhausted. He leaned against the carriage lazily. He bent one knee and curled the other to reduce the space he occupied. His eyelids were so heavy as if they were filled with lead. Su Ku and Qiguan Rang narrowed their eyes slightly. Su Ku and Qiguan Rang could only force themselves to stay awake and ride. There would be no harm without comparison. Under the careful care of the maidservants, Wei Jingxian's confinement was not bad, and her body was recovering well. She leaned against the table in high spirits and sat up. Are we going to enter the city? Before she fell asleep last night, she vaguely heard news that Jiang Pingji was going to bring people to attack Xiangyang district at night. If Jiang Pingji failed, her husband would not have such a relieved expression. The only possibility was that Jiang Pingji had won. She had led her men to conquer Xiangyang district. Wei Jingxian was smart and quick-witted. She didn't purposely ask for information and deduced the information she wanted from the details. Feng Jin narrowed his eyes and nodded slightly. His breathing gradually stabilized. Wei Jingxian saw that his body was shaking along with the jolting of the carriage, so he could not sleep well. Her heart softened. She quietly put Chongqing, who was sleeping soundly, on the bed, then stretched out her hand to support Feng Jin's pillow. Feng Jin sensed movement and opened his eyes halfway. Seeing that it was his wife, he closed his eyes again and rubbed his head. He found a comfortable position and fell into a deep sleep not long after. The carriage was specially made by the Lu residents. The shock absorption system was very good. Sleeping in the carriage did not feel much jolting. Qiguan Rang rode on the horse. He looked left and right but did not see Feng Jin. He felt depressed and kept fanning himself. He has a lovely wife and daughter. Rang also has one, but the treatment is so different. Feng Jin sneakily went to sleep. He had to keep his heavy eyelids open and resist sleepiness. Thinking about it made him feel bitter. Suku turned his head and looked at the stable carriage behind him. He said bitterly, I also have a wife at home. However, wasn't he the same as Qiguan Rang? He was not a single dog, but he was better than a single dog. The two men looked at each other and sighed. Then they looked away tacitly. At such a time they were still showing off their affection. They felt that they had suffered a great deal of damage. Because they were carrying nearly 20,000 people in Shangjing, the whole procession naturally moved at a slow pace. When the sun rose high in the sky, they saw the Xiangyang district lying dormant on the horizon. Seeing the city, the two of them had the same feeling in their hearts. The wind and clouds of this life would rise from here. Jia. On the other side, Jiang Pingji looked at the sun and estimated that it was almost time. Thus, she asked someone to fetch a bucket of water to wash away the blood stains on her body. She changed into a clean set of clothes. If it was not for the lingering smell of blood around her, no matter who saw her, they would praise her as a handsome young man. Let's go and welcome Xiaoyu and the rest outside the city. I estimated the time. They should be here soon. Jiang Pingji said cheerfully to Meng Hun, who had been busy all night and had dark circles under his eyes. When they arrive, there will be people to share the burden. Meng Hun was originally dispirited, but when he heard the second half of the sentence, he immediately perked up and subconsciously straightened his back. She waited for a quarter of an hour outside the West City with about 20 troops. Qiguan Rang and Su Ke's figures appeared in her sight. Both of them looked tired. They probably hadn't slept the whole night. Seeing this, a faint smile appeared on her face. Her eyes flickered and she couldn't help but feel excited. She urged her horse forward. You're finally here. Qiguan Rang and Su Ke pulled the reins tightly, dismounted and bowed to her. My lord. Jiang Pingji helped them up and smiled. No need to be so courteous. It's been hard on you. You're tired from the journey. Go into the city and rest for a while. Qiguan Rang looked serious. Rang, it's no big deal. It's just a little hard work, not worth mentioning. My lord has just taken over the Xiangyang district. The people's hearts are still unsettled. There are still many unresolved matters. To prevent any accidents, it's better to stabilize the situation and make arrangements for the people who follow my lord. Su Ke thought so too. Although he was really sleepy now, business was more important. The viewers in the streaming room who watched the whole process were delighted. The two strategists had walked the longest path. It was definitely their lord's trick. There were even some viewers who condemned her righteously. #laughter cry. Streamer, doesn't your conscience hurt by squeezing two trembling subordinates? Feather Dang Diao Qingtian. The streamer replied with a cold face. Of course it doesn't hurt. Squeezing employees is the basic skill of every boss. Go to the toilet with finger. Tisk, I've been following the streamer's streaming room for 3 to 4 years. I've never seen her have that kind of thing. Jiang Pingji ignored the bullet screen. Of course her conscience wouldn't hurt. Where's Huayu? She glanced around and didn't see Feng Jin. Qiguan Rang pointed at the carriage behind him with his feather fan. Jiang Pingji glanced at the carriage and sighed with emotion. It's good to have a wife who loves me. The two married men in front of her felt their knees hurt. My lord, your words hurt. Chapter 416. The epicenter of the earthquake was near Shangjing, so Shangjing suffered the most. The huge capital city was reduced to ruins and lonely souls were everywhere. Xiangyang district was at the border of Fengyi County, some distance away from the epicenter. When the earthquake happened, the tremors were not as strong as in Shangjing, so the losses were not as severe. But the timing of the earthquake was too infuriating. Who didn't sleep in the middle of the night? Therefore, there were still more than 10,000 people who went to the Yellow Springs Road in their sleep. After experiencing the torture of the earthquake and being ravaged by the Tsingyi army, Xiangyang district was in dire need of rebuilding. If one could look down from above, they would realize that at least 1/3 of the buildings were in a state of ruin. Facing the devastated Xiangyang district, Jiang Pingji composed herself and ordered the troops and the imperial guards to urgently clean up the ruined buildings. No matter what, they had to leave a place for the people of Shangjing to sleep. She pinched her brows and thought of the situation in Xiangyang district. She couldn't help but complain, this Xiangyang district is not much better than Shangjing. Feng Jin took a nap and now he had recovered some energy. He said, when heaven is about to bestow a great responsibility on a man, he must first torture his will, tire his muscles and bones, starve his skin, empty his body and act in disorder. The words of the sages and sages make sense. Everything is difficult at the beginning. Xiangyang district is now a mess. To rebuild on top of the ruins is extremely difficult. But if you overcome this hurdle, you will surely soar to the sky. Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. She wasn't a monkey, why would she soar to the sky? But his words made her feel better. She waved her hand and summoned a few of her subordinates for a meeting. She didn't like to play games and she didn't like to listen to meaningless nonsense, so she went straight to the point. After the earthquake and the ravages of General Jiao's Tsingyi army, Xiangyang district is now destitute and full of desolation. Jiang Pingji started the conversation. Everyone sat down. There was only tea and water at the table to moisten their throats. Let's not talk about the details first. The main problems we are facing now are rebuilding Xiangyang district and recruiting soldiers and workers to strengthen the defense of Xiangyang district. While rebuilding Xiangyang district, we must be prepared for war at any time. The scale of the Tsingyi army is much larger than we imagined, not to mention the Red Lotus group, which is on the same side as the Tsingyi army. These are the hidden dangers and enemies of Xiangyang district. Now we can't rely on anyone. We can only rely on ourselves. Jiang Pingji's last sentence was full of resentment. Everyone agreed with him. However, no matter which one it would consume a lot of manpower, material resources and time. Unfortunately, Jiang Pingji was very poor at the moment. This poor did not mean that she lacked food or money. What she lacked was manpower. Thanks to the generous donations from the viewers in the live streaming room, she was able to temporarily trap the little vixen, the system. The popularity points in her hands were enough for her to squander, allowing her to easily feed these tens of thousands of people. They might not be able to eat well, but at least they wouldn't starve to death. As for money, she had previously borrowed money from so many families in Shangjing, and the accumulated money was very considerable. It was enough for her to last until this winter. She continued, last night I sent someone to count the captives of the Tsingyi army. There are 1781 people, and 90% of them are young adults between the ages of 13 to 30. I've also looked through the information in the district headquarters about the population of Xiangyang district. At the most, there are 5,000 to 10,000 young adults. In addition to the people in Shangjing who followed us here. If all of them are put into forced labor, I think as long as a detailed plan is made and it is carried out step by step, it is not impossible to rebuild Xiangyang district before winter. Hearing that, Luo Yue knitted his brows tightly. Forced labor. Feng Jin said unhurriedly, my lord probably means paid forced labor. The people contribute their labor and my lord provides money and food. Not only can we ensure that the people have enough to eat and wear, but we can also rebuild Xiangyang district. My lord isn't rich now and her family property is limited. But as the district magistrate, even if the people don't do anything, my lord can't let them starve to death. Food still has to be given. Rather than that, it's better to find something for the people to do. Forced labor was originally a form of unpaid physical labor. Now that the people were living in poverty and did not have enough to eat, if they were to work for free, Jiang Pingji's good reputation would be completely ruined. Even if others asked her to do so, she would not do it. During special times, providing relief through work was an excellent method. She had done it before, so Feng Jin and the rest did not misunderstand. Of course, unpaid forced labor had long been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. It was normal for Luo Yue to misunderstand. Even so, I'm afraid there are not many people who are willing to respond, especially the local people of Xiangyang district. Qiguan Rang waved his feather fan. There was fatigue between his brows, but his eyes were bright and spirited. He continued to speak with a slightly mocking tone. Their families have money and stored food. When autumn comes, they can still harvest the autumn grain. They don't lack the food given by forced labor. The Tsing-Yi army wreaked havoc and confiscated the properties of many rich families. Confiscating one family was enough to fill their stomachs, so they did not care about the ordinary people. Therefore, the people had stored food in their homes. They had a certain level of confidence and had no need to sell their labor. The possibility of refusing forced labor was very high. After he finished speaking, Qiguan Rang even sneered in a low voice. His gaze was somewhat disdainful. Meng Hun listened and suggested softly, "Why not increase the remuneration?" Jiang Pingji's gaze was helpless. Did she look that much like a nouveau riche? "Lord, I am poor. How can I provide so much remuneration? The house was not built for me, She clasped her 10 fingers together and complained. Suddenly she thought of something and had an idea. But it's not that there's no other way. Due to the earthquake in Xiangyang district, countless buildings collapsed. Many houses and land are empty. If there's no family to inherit it according to the law, it will be confiscated. Hearing her words, Feng Jin and the rest revealed a thoughtful expression. However, there was someone who reacted faster than them. The audience in the streaming room had enough of the pain of buying a house. They did not expect to be hurt by watching the streaming. Shocking. She's actually the oldest real estate developer in history. Inyang Kuaixin. If Xiangyang district is completely rebuilt and becomes a safe place to live in troubled times, I think the price of the land will be sky high. Swizhen Beishijing. Which friend said that houses in ancient times are cheap and wants to travel to ancient times to be a landlady and live off the rent? Look, the streamer wants to get into real estate. The price of the house will be sky high. Not to mention buying a house and becoming a landlady, even if you travel to ancient times, you will still have to be a mortgage slave. Faster thief. Jiang Pingji glanced at the bullet screen and felt rather innocent. She really did not think so much at first. Why did she invest in real estate and land? She only wanted to build houses on uninhabited land. Then the people who participated in forced labor could live in the houses at a low rent. In the future, there would be a certain tax deduction. She could also rent farming equipment and cattle from the district headquarters at a lower price. Her idea was very simple. Chapter 417. Except for Luo Yue and Meng Hun, the two martial artists whose brains were at a normal level, the rest of them were people with high IQs. Even though they were limited by the times when Jiang Pingji made the suggestion, they all thought of the crux of the problem and extended it further. Others took one step at a time, but they took one step at a time and saw 10 steps ahead. They saw further and thought deeper and more holistically. I think it's feasible, my lord. Feng Jin nodded. They had too little available resources at the moment. Only by playing with the whole market flexibly could they have the possibility of development. Qiguan Rang and Su Ku both agreed. As for Luo Yue and Meng Hun, they were there to listen and to see how big the gap in IQ between normal people and abnormal people was. Jiang Pingji still maintained the small gesture of interlocking her fingers. This posture was a habit she had developed in her previous life. Those who knew her would know that she was deep in thought when they saw this small gesture. I thought it was a good idea before, but I had a flash of inspiration just now. I suddenly felt that it could be done better. Jiang Pingji revealed a meaningful smile. She had to thank the viewers in the streaming room for the inspiration. Otherwise, she wouldn't have thought of it. Meng Hun listened attentively and listened attentively. If he didn't understand, he would ask after the meeting. But Luo Yue obviously didn't have such awareness. He asked, "What is it?" Qiguan Rang gently waved his feather fan and explained to him, I think that my lord's idea just now was to build houses on public land and then rent them to the landless commoners at a low price to reduce the pressure on them. Not only will it help the commoners, but it will also alleviate the predicament of the district headquarters itself. The earthquake in Xiangyang district caused heavy casualties among the people. Many fields have become ownerless. According to the rules, they have to be returned to the public. He was a little thirsty. He drank a cup of water to moisten his throat and continued. To let the people have food, not only do we have to redistribute or rent the fields, but we also need to unify and cultivate fertile fields. If that's the case, the demand for farming tools and cattle will increase. When the district headquarters rents these things, they can add conditions. For example, the families who participate in forced labor will have some benefits. In this way, there will naturally be people who actively participate. Even the local people will participate in forced labor, considering the need for farming tools for the autumn harvest. After Luo Yue listened, it was as if he had opened the door to a new world. He listened attentively for a long time, but it seemed that Zhang Pingji did not speak that much. How did these scholars comprehend the contents of a few hundred words from a few dozen words? This was probably the pain of having their intelligence suppressed. Seeing Luo Yu's dumbfounded expression, the audience in the live broadcast room became extremely busy. On one hand, they criticized the host for being inhumane and going to ancient times to do some real estate. On the other hand, they took screenshots of Luo Yu's expression and matched it with appropriate words. Then they went to the live broadcast room and sent bullet screens to feel sorry for Luo Yu. Shedding killing scabbard. Ah, my heart aches for poor Luo Yu. That look in his eyes makes me want to laugh. Little angel. Poor child, he still doesn't understand how pathetic it is to be suppressed by others. I want to recommend through all channels, normal people who accidentally enter the world of the big shots will feel sorry for them. Luo Yue had no idea that he was being pitted by hundreds of thousands of people. After Qiguan Rang's explanation, he felt that he understood the true meaning of this meeting. He could not help but look at Qiguan Rang with admiration. District Magistrate Lu was not an ordinary person, and the people under him were even more extraordinary. Suka said, if we use this method, we can indeed quickly restore the people's livelihood. Before winter, the people who have lost their homes can also have a house to live in. They don't have to fear the cold. This is a good move. If it succeeds, I think the people of Xiangyang district will be completely loyal to the Lord. However, Zhang Pingji said, that was indeed what I thought in the beginning, but now I have a better idea. At this moment, the three of them looked at her inquisitively. There's a better idea? Luo Yue continued to not understand. Meng Hun lowered his head and played with the curled-up dead skin on his hands. Knowing that he was not smart enough, why did he have to force himself to be abused? Meng Hun felt that he was there to make up the numbers. Construction and development were not the strong points of a martial artist. There was no shame in being outclassed in intelligence. Of course, listen to me in detail. Zhang Pingji got up and fetched a brand new piece of uncut bamboo paper. She spread it out and used a piece of charcoal to draw on the words. With just a few strokes, she drew the general outline of the entire Xiangyang district, allowing everyone to see it more clearly. Now that Xiangyang district is already in the process of being rebuilt, instead of sewing and patching up the ruins, why not be more thorough and rebuild the entire district in batches? The new district magistrate's residence will be built in the center and spread out in all directions with him as the center. Xiangyang district is vast and many places have been abandoned. These places have to be reused and built into houses. As she narrated, she used a piece of charcoal to quickly draw on the bamboo paper. Not long after, a rough plan was completed. The three of them looked at it seriously. Sometimes they frowned and sometimes they revealed a thoughtful expression. Due to the limitations of the era, they did not understand the tricks of speculating on land. However, it did not mean that they did not think of the benefits. It just took time to understand. As long as they followed Zhang Pingji's train of thought, it was only a matter of time before they understood the deeper meaning. After it is completed, these few places will only be rented and not sold. After Zhang Pingji finished drawing, she circled another area. The audience in the streaming room secretly scolded her for being too cunning because the places Zhang Pingji circled were all commercial areas. According to her plan, there would be more and more people living in the future. The increase in population would naturally bring about business transactions. The prices of these excellent areas would increase accordingly. If the land deeds were in the hands of the district headquarters, The rent alone would be enough to cover the daily expenses of the district headquarters. These places will not be sold or rented, but they must be built well. The roads will be flat and wide. The environment will be quiet and pleasant. The public security must be perfect. I plan to build a unified manor here. As for the scale, it will be mainly 2 or 3 entrances. It will be fine as long as it is exquisite and elegant. Jiang Pingji pointed to the area she just circled. Now that the disaster had just passed, the district headquarters could recover many land deeds. However, these land deeds were worthless. Only after the market was circulated would the value of the land deeds increase. However, she was not satisfied with the rate of increase because these land deeds could go to heaven. Suku slowly squinted his eyes. As an internal affairs officer, he somewhat understood his lord's intention. The land deeds of these places were worthless now. However, after the structure of the entire Xiangyang district was formed, they would become extremely valuable. The plan was completed. The blueprint was placed in front of everyone. However, to complete it, they still needed to unite. Feng Jin and the other 2 thought about it and put forward their own opinions to make this rough goal more perfect. Even though they were particular about efficiency, the entire meeting took up an hour. The tea was changed twice. Finally, Jiang Pingji was responsible for assigning tasks. Xiaoyu, go and do a head count of the specific number of people. Write the recruitment notice for corvée labor. The daily wages will be paid on a daily basis. 30% will be paid with copper coins. The remaining 70% will be replaced with steamed buns or grains. Jiang Pingji said, write down all the details in detail. Send someone who can read to publicize it. We must make sure that the people understand the deeper meaning and avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. Chapter 4:18. After Jiang Pingji finished speaking, her eyes fell on Feng Jin and she said, Huayu, take some people to clean up the internal affairs of the district headquarters. Let the district headquarters resume operation as soon as possible. Calculate the amount of land that can be reclaimed and coordinate with Xiaoyu to arrange the manpower for the reclamation. Feng Jin bowed and said, I will obey the Lord's orders. When Zheng's task here is a little tiring. Let's re-register the population of Xiangyang district. The captives of the Tsingyi army, the people who came with them from Shangjing, and the local people of Xiangyang district were divided into different categories. This is a huge project, so I'm afraid Wenjing will have to work a little harder. Qiguan Rang smiled bitterly. He did not have to run around, but this paperwork was exhausting. All in all, 50 to 60,000 people would have to re-register. Just thinking about it made him feel like his hands were about to break. Although he was complaining in his heart, he still said, I will obey the Lord's orders. Pochmeng, I have something for you too. There were too few able-bodied men that Jiang Pingji could hire. No one could escape the fate of working overtime. The post-disaster measures in Xiangyang district are really crude. Lead the troops to clean up the mess. Everything will be handled according to what happened in Shangjing. If there were any citizens who showed symptoms of the disease, they had to be isolated from ordinary people at the first instance. If you discover the rotting corpses of commoners or animals, dispose of them quickly to prevent mosquitoes from breeding. This matter is of great importance and cannot be delayed. Meng Hun cupped his fists and said, This subordinate obeys. I will not disappoint the Lord's trust. Finally, she looked at Luo Yu. Even though Luo Yue and his 1,000 imperial guards had not officially entered her organization, Jiang Pingji was very comfortable using them. He did not feel awkward at all. Seeing her like this, Luo Yue's heart skipped a beat. It was as if he could foresee the tiredness in the future. He could swear that ever since he met Jiang Pingji within a short period of time, his workload had almost reached the sum of his years of work in the imperial military camp. Instructor Luo, I shouldn't have troubled you with this. But as you can see, we are short on manpower now. She has no choice. She laughed bitterly and said, Now that I'm thick-skinned for once, I hope that Instructor Luo can understand. She thanks Instructor's benevolence on behalf of the people. Luo Yu felt a chill run down his spine and hurriedly said, Magistrate Lu, why do you have to do this? If there's anything you need me to do, just let me know. Since that's the case, I'll be thick-skinned this time. The security of the entire Xiangyang district will be handed over to you. Luo Yu was dumbfounded. When he said he wasn't being polite, he really wasn't being polite at all. Jiang Pingji spoke righteously. With her face she looked very bewildering. The world is chaotic. Logically speaking, we should be united and overcome difficulties together. However, there are always thieves who want to make money from disasters. As far as she knew, there would always be human traffickers running rampant at this time, and there would be a lot of business. If they were not on guard, it was unknown how many innocent people would have their businesses stolen. For the peace of the people of Xiangyang district, I'll have to trouble Coach Luo with this matter. Luo Yu's teeth were knocked out and he swallowed the blood. Leave this matter to me. Jiang Pingji was not ruthless. What was ruthless was that she took away half of the imperial guards and threw them to other positions. With less manpower, the pressure on Luo Yu suddenly multiplied. However, words that had been said were like water that had been spilled. There was no way for him to go back on his word. Seeing that everyone had been assigned their tasks and that they would be working overtime crazily for the next few months, the audience in the live broadcast room felt that something was wrong. The task had been thrown to Feng Jin and the others. What would the host do next? Inyang Kuaishin, trash host, you can't be thinking of slacking off, right? Lao Siji Lianmeng. Am I the only one who feels sorry for Su Ku and the others? I feel that they will have to work overtime all the way until winter. There won't be a day of vacation in between. It's only May or June now. It's fine if they don't work overtime, but once they do, they will die. Just thinking about it makes me scared. Let me ask you, are you afraid of working overtime for half a year without any vacation or salary increase? Xianxia Yoji. Sai, it's not easy to live in ancient times. Girls and guys who want to transmigrate should wake up. If you accidentally meet a black-hearted boss like the host, you will definitely be squeezed dry to the last drop of your value. The audience ridiculed her, but how could Jiang Pingji slack off? In fact, she had a very important task. Not only did she have to go to the mall to exchange her popularity points for food to be mixed into the granary, but she also had to seriously make a plan for the district and make reasonable use of all the resources that could be used. If it was during peaceful times, it would be the work of at least 10 people for a few months. In ancient times, transportation was not convenient. Mining and surveying required a lot of time and energy. Building a house required wood and stone. These two things seemed to be everywhere, but in reality they were not. Although there were trees all over the mountains and plains, they could not be indiscriminately felled. The materials used were also very particular. In this era, building a house also required glutinous rice juice, glutinous rice and lime. Occasionally, eggs were also used. People could not even fill their stomachs. Who could spare these things to build a house? Therefore, she felt that it was necessary to let the people of ancient times see the black technology of ancient times. In her era, building materials had already been developed to the limit. There was not much to learn from in this era. According to the introduction in the history textbook, most of the buildings in ancient times were reinforced concrete. They were derived from the brick houses of ancient times. Where did bricks and tiles come from? She flipped through the history textbook in her head. There was a rough introduction in it. It was made by kiln firing. Although the history textbook did not introduce it in detail, her foresight and knowledge allowed her to know more or less the fur. To the people of this era, the fur was an invaluable treasure. Coal was abundant in the north of Dongqing. There were many coal mining workshops in nearby Qingda County, but the amount of coal used was small. It was a good idea to use coal as a raw material for firing bricks in a kiln. In this era, there were already crude clay firing techniques. There were also many things that could be learned from it. Find someone to accompany me to walk around the mountains. Jiang Pingji randomly summoned 2 subordinates. When she went out in simple attire, it was already a mess outside. The audience in the streaming room continuously complained that Jiang Pingji was slacking off from work. She commanded her subordinates to run around in circles, but she had the leisure to walk around leisurely. However, there was no lack of knowledgeable audience in the streaming room who saw through the trick. They believed that the streamer was definitely not that kind of person. She had her reasons for doing so. Reality proved that Jiang Pingji did not let them down. After walking for 2 days, she had a general understanding of the soil quality in the vicinity of Xiangyang district. The plan in her mind was becoming more and more perfect. She consulted a few local farmers and hunters, and also personally investigated the area. She found a suitable clay material for making stone bricks. Of course, this was not the most important thing. She looked for mud not only for firing bricks, but also to arrange a proper outlet for the mud in the shopping center. Yes, the things sold in this lousy shopping center were lousy. The rubbish system even sold mud. In the past, when Jiang Pingji was bored and strolled around the shopping center, she had seen all kinds of mud. The price was abnormally high. The system introduced that each mud had its own value. For example, some mud was rich in nutrients and could increase the yield of crops. It could also transform barren land into fertile land. In short, it was very high-end. After the fake cloth was removed from the system, the mud category was only left with the simple and crude clay and sand. The price of each item dropped from the original sky-high price, almost to the point of crashing into hell. Chapter 419. The technology of the current era was indeed underdeveloped, but many technologies had their embryonic forms or general concepts. For example, there was already a crude technique for firing clay pottery, so it was not a problem to imitate it and build a kiln. Jiang Pingji ordered people to find an old man with good skills and asked him about his experience. Based on that, she designed a suitable kiln. The viewers in the streaming room were also enthusiastic to help, which greatly reduced her detours and allowed the work to progress smoothly. What do you think of the clay, sir? Jiang Pingji had already become a tabby cat. The wooden clogs she usually wore were changed into thick straw sandals. Her wide-sleeved shirt was changed into a simple and rough brown one. She did not look like a noble son from an aristocratic family, but more like the son of a farmer who grew up in a farm. If it was not for her noble temperament and elegant demeanor, perhaps people would have misunderstood. She had visited many places in the past 2 days and selected a lot of clay. Among them were some that she bought from the shopping center. She categorized them and used them as samples to consult the experienced old man in Xianxia district who had good skills. The old man had inherited the art of firing pottery from his ancestors. He sold pottery bowls for a living. The most important person he had come into contact with in his life was the village magistrate. Since when did he have the chance to speak to the district magistrate face to face? Moreover, the district magistrate was humbly asking for his advice. If it was any other day, people would definitely say he was crazy and daydreaming. But today, something that would not even happen in his dreams happened right in front of his eyes. He calmed himself down and calmed his frightened little heart down. There were strange things every year, but there were especially many this year. There was a district magistrate who did not like work and liked to play with clay. The old man muttered in his heart, but on the surface he seriously examined several types of clay. Based on the old man's many years of experience in firing pottery, he carefully selected 3 types of clay and analyzed their advantages and disadvantages. On the whole, they were very suitable to be used to make pottery. Jiang Pingji took a look and saw that there was clay from the shopping center among them. Hearing the old man's affirmation, Jiang Pingji felt relieved. Her 2 days of running up and down the mountain were worth it. What do you think if we tamp them and make them into this shape? Jiang Pingji took out a neatly folded piece of paper. After unfolding it, a 3-dimensional rectangle was drawn on it. The current drawing technique was restricted to a flat surface. There was no concept of 3-dimensional, let alone such a technique. The old man looked at it in amazement. Although the charcoal block's drawing was crude, even an illiterate person like him could understand what was drawn at a glance. What is the purpose of this? The old man turned the paper back and forth, feeling pity in his heart. Such a strange thing was drawn on a piece of bamboo paper. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't look like cutlery. Who knew what it was used for? If it was thrown on the ground, it could barely be used as a saddle, but wouldn't it be heavier than a saddle if it was made of clay? Jiang Pingji said, building houses and paving roads. Look at this thing, it's so neat and tidy. If it's stacked up, look how neat it will be. The old man suddenly opened his eyes wide and said, this thing can be used to build houses and pave roads? Feeling like he had opened the door to a new world, the old man held the bamboo paper in his hands and muttered to himself. If we use this little thing to build a house, how much will we burn? Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest and said seriously, we can't always use this to build a house. Bricks, wood, and stone were used together. After the previous earthquake, she felt that it was better to build a house more sturdy. The houses of the current era were drafty in summer and drafty in winter. Because the whole body was made of wood, once a fire broke out, it would burn the whole area. It was impossible to save it. Jiang Pingji wanted to add bricks to the current architectural style to increase the warmth and stability. If possible, she wanted to think about how to prevent fire. But she didn't specialize in this, she could only provide a general direction. The specific implementation would be left to the professionals. However, when it came to the reconstruction of Xiangyang district and the planning of houses, she also considered the problem of fire. The old man muttered, "If we use this to build a house, how extravagant will it be?" Because Jiang Pingji's attitude was good, the old man who was trembling with fear at the beginning relaxed completely. He discussed with her how to start the kiln and how to burn the bricks. Among them was the problem of the burning temperature. According to the old man's experience, the amount of wood used to burn such bricks was extremely terrifying. The temperature required was very high. If the temperature was not high enough, the bricks in the kiln might all be burnt to a crisp. The loss would not be small. With the wood, it would be better to use it to build houses instead of burning bricks. The old man silently swallowed his words. No matter how approachable he was still the district magistrate. He was not someone ordinary people could offend. Jiang Pingji asked curiously, "Then how do you usually burn pottery?" With the old man's guidance, they went to see the pottery workshop of this era. The environment and equipment were very simple. Although the content of the livestream these few days was very boring, the audience in the livestream room watched with relish. Many of the audience liked to give their own suggestions. They would even specially search for information and try their best to be rigorous and reasonable. If any of the suggestions were adopted by the streamer, there would always be a feeling of being one of the builders of Xiangyang district. It was like a time traveler working hard in ancient times. There was a great sense of achievement and immersion. Chinga Manwu. I've read many time travel novels in the past. There was also a plot of building a kiln, but they burn glass. This thing was an absolute luxury in ancient times. It seems that the streamer is more practical and burns bricks. I feel that the value of this thing is much lower than glass. The difficulty shouldn't be high? Don't Huashuo Badeo. I remember that glass seems to be a derivative of firing. When the streamer masters the technique of firing bricks and builds Xiangyang district to prosperity, will you still be afraid of not having the energy to make glass? Streamer, don't carelessly use glass to cheat people. The rarer something is, the better it is. This thing will definitely make money. Little match that sells her daughter. #propping chin. You have to take it one step at a time. It's easy to pull your balls if you go too far. You're still messing around with bricks and now you're thinking of making glass. Nibbling the princess's poisonous apple. There are many reasons why pottery firing is easy to fail. But I think the temperature is the key. Nowadays most of the fuel is wood. Firing a kiln consumes a lot of wood. It's very expensive. I saw the streamer fiddling with coal yesterday. This thing is indeed more economical than wood. The next problem is how to raise the temperature in the kiln. Jiang Pingji was multitasking. She chatted with the old man while checking the bullet screen for useful content. She thought about it and sent a bullet screen. Host V. Nibbling the princess's poisonous apple. The audience had a flash of inspiration and suddenly remembered something. Nibbling the princess's poisonous apple. Blower? Bellows? Jiang Pingji was deep in thought. After thinking for a while she asked the old man, "Can we use Toyue to increase the temperature in the kiln?" The old man thought deeply and said awkwardly, "I'm afraid it won't be of much use." What is Toyue? The audience in the streaming room was also a little confused. But listening to Jiang Pingji's words, it should be something like a bellow or a blower to increase the firepower. There are bellows in this era. Chapter 420. Little Match Who Sells His Daughter. The following is from Baidu. Toyue is a tool for blowing and burning. Is there a Toyue between heaven and earth and lousy? It's empty but unyielding, it moves but it comes out. There are unearthed portraits from the Han Dynasty. Toyue has 3 wooden rings, 2 round plates and is made of leather. The principle is similar to the bellows but it shouldn't be as good. Otherwise the old man wouldn't have answered that way. Little Match Who Sells His Daughter. I'll check Baidu. Baidu said that the double-action piston bellows is the most important invention in Hua country. It's definitely more advanced than the Toyue. If Jiang Pingji was alone she might have to spend a lot of time on this thing. But the viewers in the streaming room worked together which greatly reduced the difficulty. Double-action piston bellows? Jiang Pingji fell into deep thought. What came to her mind wasn't the bellows, but the contents of the mechanical foundation course. If the bellows were derived from the Toyue, the two should have something in common. She asked the old man if there was a tuyue in the workshop. Then, under the old man's confused gaze, she studied the tuyue over and over again. I have an idea. This should be able to raise the temperature in the kiln to meet the conditions for baking bricks. The old man saw her sitting on the floor, taking out new bamboo paper and laying it on the ground. He took a piece of charcoal and started drawing. His originally calm expression instantly cracked. I didn't expect you to be such a frivolous district magistrate. Why are you playing tricks instead of doing your job properly? The viewers in the streaming room also said, Streamer, why aren't you obediently fighting for the world? Why are you inventing? Streamer, if you steal someone else's job, the Mahist will cry in front of you. On the other side, Jiang Pingji was playing around with the tricks in the eyes of others. Her subordinates were already crazy busy. Luo Yue led 500 imperial guards to patrol everywhere. Not only did they have to pay attention to threats from the outside world, but they also had to pay attention to the security in the city. Needless to say, the facts proved that Jiang Pingji had foresight. Luo Yue caught 4 or 5 human traffickers who wanted to steal children or forcefully buy them. At first, he could still maintain a calm expression. He ordered his men to beat up the human traffickers according to the law and fine them a sum of money. Later, he directly arrested them and threw them into the district headquarters prison. If it wasn't for someone stopping him, he would have pulled out his sword and chopped them up. Damn bear, didn't he see that they were so busy that their feet didn't even touch the ground, wishing they could hit the back of their heads with their feet? To think that there would be such an ignorant fellow who would bump into me and increase my workload. Luo Yu, who was exhausted from working overtime, felt that anyone who tried to disrupt the peace and order of the county deserved to die. In reality, Luo Yu's situation was still considered good. The other people's situation could be said to be an Azura's battlefield. Qiguan Rang had never liked to stand out, but household registration was no small matter. He had to take it seriously. 50 to 60,000 people at the very most, and every single one of them had to be registered. How long would it take for him to be so busy? After 2 days in the Azura field, he couldn't care less about his demeanor and almost roared at Jiang Pingji. They wanted him. They wanted him. They wanted him. Important things must be repeated 3 times. However, 99 out of 100 people were illiterate, let alone able to write. Where was she going to find someone who could read and write for him? Qiguan Rang's eyes were bloodshot and bloodshot. He had completely lost his poise. I don't care, you have to give me the person or I'll die in front of you. Jiang Pingji did not even dare to guess what realm the man had reached in his cultivation. In order not to drive Qiguan Rang crazy, Jiang Pingji could only think of a way. Perhaps it was a blessing from the heavens. She saw Takshu, who was serving her tea, and suddenly had an idea. She said excitedly, "There's someone." Who? Jiang Pingji said, "Aren't there a few girls living in the backyard of the district headquarters? They were originally from an extraordinary background. If it wasn't for the Tsingyi army, they wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Not to mention how talented they are, I think they should be able to write. Why don't we hire a few to be your clerks and help you with the registration?" Qiguan Rang furrowed his brows and said, "Sure." Before those girls met with misfortune, they were all famous rich girls in Xiangyang district. As the saying goes, the poor raise their children, the rich raise their daughters. All of them were literate, so it was not a problem for them to help with household registration. However, they still had to seek their opinions on this matter. Fortunately, Xiangyang district was north of Dongqing, so the atmosphere was not affected by the neighboring country Zhongzhou. It was not a big deal for the girls to show their faces. Hearing this, the girls looked at each other. After hesitating, 9 girls agreed to help. The others either felt tired or felt that it was beneath them to deal with the commoners. Qiguan Rang was too lazy to express his opinion. He asked someone to prepare men's clothing for the 9 girls and even asked them to make their faces coarser. Then he pulled them away. Before Jiang Pingji could heave a sigh of relief, Feng Jin quietly came to the door. He did not say anything, he just looked at her. She felt a little guilty. "Huayu, are you done with your work?" Feng Jin said with a pair of heavy eye bags. He had only slept for an hour for a few days in a row. The circles under his eyes were a little dark. "I haven't seen Chongqing and Jingxian for 3 days. I'm so busy that I don't even have time to see my wife and daughter. My lord, don't you feel bad about this?" Jiang Pingji said innocently, "I have no one here." I cried, threw a tantrum and threatened to hang myself. My lord, I don't want to make things as ugly as Wenjing, Feng Jin said faintly. The audience in the streaming room was extremely distressed. They continuously lashed out at Jiang Pingji the Zhou Bopi. Lao Siji Lianmeng. Look at you, streamer, what sins have you committed? Qiangbing Jianwu, a good son of an aristocratic family, was forced to say that he cried, threw a tantrum and threatened to hang himself. It's a human tragedy. Han Yutong, that's enough. Streamer, do you have the heart to see Feng Jin hang himself in front of you? Pia Piaoyang, aren't there more than 10 women in the backyard of the district headquarters? Ask them. All of them are literate and can write. Host, can you bear to watch them eat rice and do nothing? Those are all shining grains. They don't fall from the sky. They cost money. You absolutely can't bear it. If you threaten and bribe them, they must work. If they refuse to work, the ones kneeling are your strategists. Feng Jin said faintly, yesterday Jing Xian sent someone to deliver a letter. She said that Chongqing misses her father. Jiang Pingji held it in for a while and said, I'll try. After sending Feng Jin off, Jiang Pingji did not have time to catch her breath. Meng Hun came from outside again. I really have no one here. If you don't believe me, go to the backyard and take a look. Meng Hun was dumbfounded. He said, what do you mean there's no one in the backyard? Jiang Pingji coughed softly and said, nothing. Meng Hun then began to report the progress of the past 2 days. Speaking of miserable, Meng Hun was also very busy these days. He slept less than 2 hours a day. Even his meals were eaten while he was on the road. However, he was too honest. He always worked hard and did not complain no matter how hard or tired he was. After reporting the progress, he returned to his post and continued to fight. Jiang Pingji heaved a long sigh of relief. She ate some dry steamed buns to fill her stomach. She asked Taxi to get a basin of water for her to wash her feet. She lowered her head to clean the blisters on her feet. Wooden clogs broke easily. Straw sandals rubbed her feet. She had been climbing up and down for the past few days and was very tired. At that moment, a message came from outside saying that Suku had arrived. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Not only was she speechless, but the audience in the streaming room was also convulsing with laughter. They kept saying that she was getting what she deserved. Chapter 421. Looking at the screen full of ridicule, Jiang Pingji felt like she was about to collapse. Host V, I'm telling you seriously, if you continue to ridicule me, I'm going to throw a tantrum and go on strike. This kind of threat was really weak to the audience. Instead, they laughed even harder. Zwizhen Beishijing, Emperor of Dongqing. I'm not dead yet, you rebel, how dare you call yourself emperor? Baduhuo Badeo, hashtag propping chin, I feel that sooner or later the host will call herself emperor. I'm just enjoying it first. Cat food is here. Do you guys want to bet on why Suku is here? Is he looking for the host to ask for people or to report to her about his work? I think a crying child gets milk. Uncle Meng Hun is too honest, he only works and doesn't talk. I feel sorry for him. I don't think Suku is the type to keep quiet, he's probably here to cry too. The audience started to bet. Jiang Pingji put her feet down and put away the tool she used to pick up blisters. In less than 2 breaths, Suku walked over with steady steps and bowed to her. Jiang Pingji was scared and asked helplessly, Xiaoyu, are you short of manpower and want to ask me for it? Suku looked at her silently, then took out a thick new account book from his sleeve. As an accountant who had been with Jiang Pingji for many years, Suku was very familiar with accounting. Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. She took the book from Suku and opened it. She almost vomited blood. Suku then said, I'm not here to ask for people, my lord. Jiang Pingji calmed herself down, then lowered her head to look at the statistics on the account book. He might as well ask for people. Suku was indeed the accountant she valued. He was good at managing internal affairs, but he was also very clever at accounting. In front of her were the rice expenses for this period of time and the following month's various expenses. She didn't know she was so poor. The original food can last for 3 to 4 months, but with the people of Xiangyang district, it's a little hard to make ends meet. Suku sighed and deliberately said in a low voice, I really can't do anything. A clever housewife can't cook without rice, right? So I don't care if Lord is turning stone into gold, digging into someone else's granary or stealing their stored food. If the granary doesn't have enough food, the people who hire you will naturally panic. Jiang Pingji took a deep breath and asked, Xiaoyu, shouldn't I share the Lord's worries under normal circumstances? Su Ke looked at her, raised his hand and pointed at the 2 dark circles under his eyes, and calmly added insult to injury. If I had the ability to be separated, I would naturally share my master's burden. Su Ke was expressionless. It's a pity that I'm just an ordinary person and don't have that kind of supernatural power. Even if we split it in half, it would still be a drop in the bucket. My lord, do you still want to hear anything else? He only wanted food. It was already good enough that he didn't join in the fun and ask for people. Jiang Pingji almost couldn't control the nerves in the corners of her mouth. She took a deep breath. She said, leave the food to me. Su Ke cupped his hands respectfully and prepared to leave to continue working overtime while waiting for the food to be stored in the warehouse. Jiang Pingji was depressed. She shouted outside, Takshu, bring me some cosmetic powder. These people were bullying her for having good skin and not having dark circles under her eyes after staying up all night. The audience in the streaming room laughed hysterically as they watched Zhong Sunyuan draw 2 big dark circles under his eyes. Yu Yecheng, I'm dying of laughter. I feel so sorry for Su Ke and the others' dark circles under their eyes. The lousy streamer exploits her employees and doesn't give them holidays or raises. But the streamer, you drew 2 dark circles under your eyes. Are you purely here to entertain the public? Seriously, what happened to the cold and aloof goddess? Why did she become a joker? Zuying Katyao, #rubbing face. Am I the only one who realized that the streamer has actually been driven crazy? The subordinates are driven crazy by their work. The streamer is driven crazy by her subordinates and work. They were born from the same root, so why hurt each other? Outsiders thought that Jiang Pingji was playing in the mud and not doing her job properly, but the audience in the streaming room saw everything she did. The energy she spent these few days was no less than that of others. However, the streamer's skin was good, so there was no sign of her staying up all night. She was at a disadvantage. Jiang Pingji calmed herself down and grabbed a wet handkerchief to wipe off the dark circles on her face. She regained her usual cold expression and brought a few troops to transport grain. Although Su Ke didn't find out the truth, the shrewd accountant wasn't that easy to fool. He knew that Jiang Pingji had a way to get a huge amount of grain, but he didn't know how she did it. Using popularity points to buy grain from the mall was simply a fantasy for people in this era. Jiang Pingji didn't want to say it out to scare people, so she simply followed Su Ke's imagination and let him misunderstand that she had the talent to find grain depots. A batch of grain was transported from outside the city. Jiang Pingji watched as the troops stored it in the warehouse. Then she sleepily rubbed her sore eyes. She didn't know how expensive oil and salt were until she was in charge. It would be great if she wasn't the son of an aristocrat. Then she could shed all pretense of cordiality and seek help from the aristocrats. She would beat you up if you didn't give me the grain. It's not easy to be a good person. Jiang Pingji sighed. It's even harder to be the lord. After all that, she still had to play with mud again. She supervised the construction progress of the brick kiln and went to the mall to buy mud. She mixed the mud she bought from the mall with the local mud. According to the experience of the pottery-making elder, both were suitable for making bricks. However, to save manpower, she directly bought the mud from the mall and hid it somewhere outside the city. It wouldn't take much time to transport it. If she dug the local mud, the manpower cost would be high and it would take a long time. A few subordinates could kill her. Xiangyang district was close to Qingda County, so it was very convenient to buy coal. It was summer now, so there was very little coal. Jiang Pingji ordered people to flip through the coal storage in Xiangyang district and found that there was enough to make 20 kilns of bricks. With enough manpower, it wouldn't take much time to build a simple brick kiln. At that moment, everyone suddenly realized that their lord didn't play with mud anymore. She played with wood. They were dumbfounded. On the surface, she played with wood, but in reality she was making the double-action piston bellows. If I say, I'm not slacking off and I'm not doing my job, will anyone still believe me? She hadn't slept for 2 days to make the rubbish bellows. The audience in the streaming room could testify that she hadn't closed the streaming room for 2 days. She looked at Takshu pitifully. Her pitiful expression made Takshu laugh. Takshu comforted her with a smile. When the bricks are out of the kiln, the gentleman will understand. Jiang Pingji's wounded heart was barely healed. Although the audience in the streaming room helped, brickmaking was still a foreign field to Jiang Pingji, not to mention the technicians who were involved. They had never heard of bricks. Whether the bricks could be made or not and what the results would be, no one was sure. Jiang Pingji waited for the news of the brick kiln. She was perturbed and nervous. However, it seemed that God couldn't stand her peace. Just as the construction of Xianxia district was in full swing, a piece of news came. Jiang Pingji was so angry that she almost drew her sword and killed someone. Chapter 422. Jiang Pingji did not like to swear. She had always believed in the principle of using her fists instead of her mouth. Since the start of the streaming room, it seemed that only the Tsing-Yi army had enjoyed such a high standard of treatment. What ability did the Tsing-Yi army have to provoke Jiang Pingji into cursing? The audience in the streaming room was also furious. More people expressed their concerns. They hoped that Jiang Pingji could calm down a little and not be blinded by anger. The Tsing-Yi army could fight at any time. If they could not control the situation now, they might lose everything. Xianxia district was still in a state of construction. Although it had only been a few days, it was already thriving. The audience could totally imagine that after a while, this city might shine with new life. Tumi Dalao, you must be calm, streamer. Don't be impulsive and do something that you will regret. Baidu News Department. Yes. The debt of the Tsing-Yi army can be settled at any time. Streamer, don't be impulsive. Buxiang Jiaging Xianxia. Impulsiveness is the devil. Someone hold the streamer down. Apart from these persuasions, there were naturally people who jeered. Some were completely malicious while others were too angry. Xianxia, what are you afraid of? Are you just going to be a coward? The Tsing-Yi army directly stepped on the streamer's head. These heartless fellows deserve to die. If the streamer does not do anything this time, guess how serious the consequences will be? The troops are indeed her private troops. They are all slaves, but they have also shed blood for the streamer. If the streamer does not bring people to save them this time, who will be willing to risk their lives for her in the future? Why Heshabi? Didn't the Tsing-Yi army plead for the people? The streamer's troops saved so many people in Fengyi County. What did the Tsing-Yi army do? They burned, killed and looted in Xiangyang district. After learning that General Jiao's Tsing-Yi army was destroyed, they directly vented their anger on the 2,000 troops in Fengyi County. They are simply beasts. Jiang Pingji was in no mood to read the bullet screen. She looked at the messenger solemnly. Her lips were tightly shut. The aura around her was filled with blood and ruthlessness. Even though she was dressed cleanly, she still gave the illusion that her whole body was stained with blood. She was like a soul reaper who had crawled out of hell. The technicians who were looking after the brick kiln shivered. They did not even dare to look up at her. Jiang Pingji curled her lips and revealed a bloodthirsty smile. I haven't even gone to look for trouble with them, but they've already come knocking on my door. Coincidentally, there's a shortage of manpower here. She didn't know how long she had been holding it in, but her voice had turned from clear to hoarse. It was very uncomfortable to listen to. Jiang Pingji said to the messenger, gather a few gentlemen and summon Coach Meng and Coach Luo. We're having a meeting. The last two words were almost squeezed out from the back of his molars, filled with killing intent. Qiguan Rang and the others arrived at the district headquarters one after another. As soon as they entered the door, they saw Jiang Pingji sitting at the seat of honor. Her aura was stifling. Lord, what happened? Qiguan Rang was the first to arrive, but he had never liked to be at the top, so he sat in a more secluded spot. As soon as he sat down, he saw Feng Jin and the others also entering. Their tired faces were filled with suspicion. They hadn't gathered together like this since the last meeting to assign tasks. Something big must have happened. This thought emerged in everyone's mind at the same time. Jiang Pingji didn't answer Qiguan Rang's question. She only gestured for them to take their seats before letting the messenger in. She said in a hoarse voice, repeat what you just said to the gentleman again. Hearing Jiang Pingji's voice change, their hearts skipped a beat. They tacitly turned their gazes to the messenger. The more they listened, the heavier their hearts sank. The messenger said, this morning a severely injured soldier arrived outside the city. After careful identification, he turned out to be one of my lord's troops. The soldier's injuries were severe. He only had time to say, The Xingyi army attacked Fengyi County, attacked the troops at night and massacred the people. Due to his heavy injuries, he fainted and is still in danger. Attacked the troops at night? Massacred the people? When Feng Jin and the others heard this, their hearts sank. Qiguan Rang tightened his grip on the feather fan in his hand. He was the one who brought the 3,000 troops out of Chongzhou. Among them, 1,000 followed him to receive Jiang Pingji, while the other 2,000 went to Fengyi County to rescue the people. The situation in Fengyi County was more dangerous, so after Jiang Pingji took over Xiangyang district, she didn't bring the troops back. However, who would have thought that the Xingyi army would be so narrow-minded? When they heard that General Jiao was killed, they took advantage of Fengyi County's unpreparedness to attack and occupy it. They even attacked the wounded camp where the troops were at night. For a moment, the entire district headquarters was immersed in a heavy atmosphere. After a while, Jiang Pingji heard a flurry of hurried footsteps coming from outside. Another messenger came in. "My lord, the troop who delivered the message has woken up." Jiang Pingji said, "Get someone to carry him in." Not long after, 2 people carried a stretcher in. A troop covered in blood was lying on it. He was barely breathing and his chest rose and fell weakly. When he saw Jiang Pingji approaching, his dull and lifeless eyes suddenly brightened. 2 streams of turbid hot tears rolled down his cheeks. He said with great effort, "Ling, Feng, army. That group of bastards attacked at night and injured many of our brothers, are now in limbo. Ling, you must save them." Jiang Pingji clenched her molars and said, "I will bring them back, not one of them is missing." Hearing her promise, the troop's lips trembled a few times. His eyes were filled with nostalgia and regret, but they gradually dimmed. After a while, Feng Jin raised his hand and placed it under the man's nose, then felt his pulse. He said in a low voice, "He's gone." Jiang Pingji bit her lower lip and suppressed the surging murderous intent in her heart. "Carry him away and give him a proper burial." Except for the first few servants she bought and the soldiers brought by Meng Hun, the rest of the troops were basically bandits. In the beginning they did submit to Jiang Pingji for the sake of survival. But after a long time they found the feeling of being upright and upright people. Their hearts were filled with hot blood. Even if they were bandits with a goal. They were willing to shed their blood for those who understood them. Their feelings were mutual. They were loyal to Jiang Pingji, so she naturally cherished these subordinates. Jiang Pingji closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she was already calm. She looked at the stretcher that was being carried away and said in a flat voice, "I want to send troops to rescue them." Feng Jin opened his mouth and said after a while, "I can understand my lord's feelings and I won't stop you now. I hope my lord understands what it means to send troops at this time. There are many things to be done in Xiangyang district. It's so weak that it can't withstand a single blow. If my lord brings troops to support them, I'm afraid." Chapter 423. Qiguan Rang sighed and secretly tugged at Feng Jin's sleeves, giving him a look. His lord would never listen to such a matter of principle. As long as she did not make a decision out of anger as a strategist, they should support her. In fact, if she chose to give up the 2,000 troops for the sake of the big picture, Qiguan Rang and the rest would be bitterly disappointed. Prepare for war. Jiang Pingji's face was cold. No matter how many people they killed, we will kill them 10 times or 100 times more. Su Ku sighed in his heart. He suddenly felt that days like today would repeat many times in the future. My lord has made up her mind. I will obey. Meng Hun took the initiative to volunteer. He looked sincere. My lord, you must bring me with you in this battle. The troops were not only Jiang Pingji's private troops, but also the troops that Meng Hun had poured countless efforts into. He must kill the enemy with his own hands and wash away this humiliation with the enemy's blood. Jiang Pingji clasped her fingers together and sat upright on the seat of honor. Her thin lips moved slightly. Coach Meng, bring the troops with me to save people. The defense of the district city will all be under Wenjing's command. Luo, you could not help but volunteer. District Magistrate Lu, please. Jiang Pingji interrupted him and said, It's true that I want to save people, but I can't disregard the lives of the people in Xiangyang district and directly transfer all the troops. The Xingyi army obviously came prepared with a strong desire for revenge. Whether it's the 2,000 troops or you, I don't want to lose them. Finishing her words, she stood up and walked to the backyard in an unquestionable manner. Feng Jin and Su Ku both turned to look at Qiguan Rang with interest. Qiguan Rang could not compare to them in terms of time and friendship with Jiang Pingji, but she was more partial to Qiguan Rang when it came to official matters, especially when it came to war. This time she even handed over the deployment of the district city to him. This kind of trust was really rare. They were surprised. Qiguan Rang was even more unprepared. Go and prepare. My lord does not like to procrastinate. As a housekeeper, Suka had a lot of trivial matters to take care of, including the preparation of resources before the war. Feng Jin smiled and said, if that's the case, I will take my leave and check the defense equipment. Qiguan Rang secretly laughed bitterly. He left with Meng Hun, his brows tightly knitted. Meng Hun followed him halfway and said hesitantly, Mr. Wenjing, the princess's move is a bit. In all fairness, among the three of them, Qiguan Rang's status was probably the lowest. However, Jiang Pingji did not hide her bias. Anyone who was not blind could see it. Meng Hun was worried that there would be internal strife, which would cause estrangement in the hearts of these people. A quarrel between scholars was definitely more terrifying than a general. When Qiguan Rang heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, Coach Meng. The Lord and the others know it very well. Meng Hun was an honest man and couldn't wrap his head around it. My lord did this on purpose? Look, Xiaoyu is proficient in internal affairs. No matter how messy the mess is, he can clean it up in his hands. Huayu is proficient in foreign affairs. It's just that the Lord's foundation is still shallow, so he hasn't shown his ability yet. As Qiguan Rang said this, he added somewhat helplessly, Rang is an expert in the path of treachery and is naturally suitable for the battlefield. My lord sees through everyone's strengths and weaknesses, so Huayu and the others won't be unhappy. In terms of war strategy, they all knew it, but they all had their strengths and weaknesses. In the current situation, it was obviously safer for Qiguan Rang to defend the city. If it was a stupid and narrow-minded person, he might have a grudge. However, Su Ku and Feng Jin were different, so Qiguan Rang wasn't worried. I see I've thought too much, Meng Hun said embarrassedly. Qiguan Rang sighed in his heart. That was what he said, but he really didn't want to stand out. However, the situation was not in his control. If he didn't stand out, he would only lose his life. He must defend the Xiangyang district. Fortunately, the defense equipment of the Xiangyang district was still there. He had recruited many soldiers these few days, so he still had some confidence. Qiguan Rang wasn't like the unruly Xingyi army. If Jiang Pingji broke through the city defense set up by him, it wouldn't be that easy. In less than 2 hours, Su Ke completed the pre-war preparations. The troop of 1,000 people was ready to go. Everyone brought 6 days' worth of dry rations. Jiang Pingji didn't say any nonsense. She simply said, kill the Xingyi army. We'll bring all our brothers back. The summer wind blew over hot and dry. Her voice was clearly heard by everyone's ears. Everyone felt as if a heavy boulder was pressing down on their hearts. And under the boulder was a roaring beast that was about to break out of its seal. Kill the Xingyi army. Bring our brothers back. Meng Hun shouted in a suppressed voice. Kill the Xingyi army. Bring our brothers back. Kill the Xingyi army. Bring our brothers back. Kill the Xingyi army. Bring our brothers back. The uniform roar resounded in the sky above their heads. It was deafening. The anger was about to burst out. Let's go. Running with a heavy load was a regular training course for the troops. Ordinary people would be panting after running 3 to 5 miles. For the troops, they would at most be sweating. Moreover, they only brought improved crossbows, a bag of arrows, a water bag, and dry rations for the next few days. This bit of weight couldn't be compared to their usual training. Naturally, it was easier. Standing at the city gate, Qiguan Rang sighed as he watched Jiang Pingji leave with her men. He ordered his men to strengthen the defense. Originally, he thought that the next 6 months would be more stable. He was willing to work overtime brainlessly. Who knew that the Xingyi army would be so blind to provoke Jiang Pingji? According to her vengeful personality, she would definitely wipe out the Xingyi army in Fengyi County. I guess I'll have a tiring life, he muttered in a low voice. There was a hidden worry in his eyes as he looked into the distance. You must come back safely. After traveling for 4 hours, Jiang Pingji asked her men to stop and rest for 15 minutes. She spread out the great universal geographical map of Fengyi County. Meng Hun panted heavily and asked, "My lord, which direction should we go next?" The weather was too hot. Even if they didn't carry much weight, they were exhausted after a long journey. However, what made him even more depressed was that the troops who desperately came to ask for help didn't have time to inform the main troops of their location. Or rather, they didn't know where it was. The terrain of Fengyi County was more complicated. The troops were just outsiders. It was good enough that they could hold on to reach Xiangyang district to report. How could they expect anything else? Therefore, they could only think of a way to determine where the troops were trapped. This undoubtedly increased the difficulty of rescue. If they made a wrong judgment and took the wrong detour, it would be too late. Bue Heshabi, I hope we can make it in time. Otherwise, that young man's sacrifice would have been in vain. Chapter 424. Jiang Pingji frowned as she looked at the sheepskin map in her hand. Meng Hun saw that she was focused and did not dare to disturb her. After a while, she drew a route on the map with her finger. Let's go like this. Meng Hun looked at the sheepskin map with some doubt in his eyes. He did not know why she was so sure. Jiang Pingji panted heavily and drank half of the water in one breath. Then she threw it back to White's horse ornament. That person did not say where he was when he was alive, but the marks on his body showed everything. Jiang Pingji wiped her face with her palms. Her palms were full of hot sweat. It has been hot for a few days without rain. His clothes are stained with large patches of stains. The original color is almost indistinguishable, but the trousers from his feet to his knees are cleaner than other parts. There are some water plants in his straw sandals, which means that he waded in the water during his escape. From the Great Universal Geographical Map, there are rivers and water plants between the two parts of the road. This is the only place that fits these conditions. I think the troops fought and retreated at the same time and hid here. I'm not 100% sure, but I can only take a gamble. Meng Hun looked carefully at the place that Jiang Pingji pointed out. His expression was solemn. If that's the case, they may still be alive. According to the map, the place that Jiang Pingji pointed out had a winding terrain. It was easy to hide. I hope so. She looked calm and undisturbed. The weather is hot now. It's easy to start a fire in the forest. If the Xingyi army does not want to waste time searching the mountain and directly sets it on fire, it will be troublesome. Let's continue our journey. Now that time was tight, she naturally did not want to delay. What if they just needed a little more time? The flowing clouds drifted away, and the orange afterglow shone on the earth. The air became more and more stuffy, almost suffocating them. Gradually the night sky darkened. At the foot of a mountain, a strong middle-aged man sat on a stool. He stared ahead fiercely as if he was dipped in poison. He spat on the ground and said indignantly, "Bah! I won't let any of these guys go today." Not far away there were shadows. "Be quick with your actions. Today we will burn them alive on the mountain as a sacrifice to our brothers' souls in heaven. Hurry up, why are you lazing around? If you continue to slack off, the general will whip you to death. Hurry up and get to work." Rustling sounds rang out at the foot of the mountain. Thousands of figures swayed, each of them carrying something in their arms. Half an hour later, a middle-aged man dressed in coarse clothes bowed and said to the middle-aged man sitting on the stool, "General, everything is almost ready. This time they won't be able to escape even if they have wings. Not to mention these 3,000 to 5,000 defeated soldiers, even if 3,000 to 5,000 perfected golden immortals came, they would still be roasted alive. They would absolutely not be given a chance to escape. Now that the weather was dry, it had not rained for several days. Once the mountain was set on fire, the fire would not stop even if they wanted to. Although he said that, the middle-aged man still felt a little scared. Previously, in order to vent their anger, the Xingyi army launched a sneak attack on the so-called wounded camp at night. However, no one expected these people to react so quickly. Not only did they fail to annihilate all of them, but they were also discovered by the other side. It was laughable that these people were so stupid that they did not forget to bring along those burdens when they fled for their lives. Now they were forced to flee in a sorry state, and there were countless casualties along the way. In the end, they even fled to the mountain in a vain attempt to use the complicated terrain to shake them off. They were simply too stupid. Why did they enter the deep mountains to search? They could just directly set fire to it. These people did not notice that behind a huge rock on the mountain, there was a figure carrying a crossbow hiding. After a while, this person returned to the mountain with a heavy expression. He panted and said, "These beasts are really planning to set fire to the mountain. The foot of the mountain is full of dry firewood. Set fire to the mountain? What should they do?" Hearing this, many people panicked. Most of these people were injured. Many of them were pale and had dark eye sockets. They looked listless. There were old people, children, and many young men and women. In the face of impending death, they could only hug each other and cry bitterly. They originally thought that these people could protect their safety and help them escape, but now they were in a desperate situation. The shadow of death shrouded their hearts. Under such pressure, finally someone could not help but stand up and roar. "It's all because of you, Jinx. If not for you..." Poof, before this person could finish speaking, an arrow emerged from his knee and blood gushed out. Seeing that person wailing in pain and rolling on the ground while hugging his leg, many people screamed. The scene was almost chaotic. Pow! The person who shot the arrow pulled out the arrow. He did not mind the blood and dirt and directly stuffed it back into the quiver. "I hope you understand that if not for saving you, why would my brothers and I be trapped in this lousy place? My brothers who have followed me for 3 to 4 years died to save you useless people. I didn't complain, so what right do you have to speak? All of you shut up. Whoever dares to make any noise will end up like this." At this moment, someone laughed sinisterly and echoed, "That's right. If not for our master's generosity, who would want to drag you out from the ruins? Now that the Xingyi army has come knocking, you're starting to throw away your burdens. If I had known that I would save a group of ingrates, I would have abandoned you long ago. Let's see how the Xingyi army treats you. The men will be beheaded and their legs will be chopped off, the women will be used as prostitutes, and the children will not be spared. By the way, I used to be a bandit. I don't mind going back to my old profession and killing you first to vent my anger." Enough, the more you speak, the more outrageous you become. The person who spoke was a youth in brown. He sat on a rock and a silver-white spear was placed beside him. He had dashing eyebrows and bright eyes and a handsome face. Even though the bloodstains on his face had dried up, it still could not hide his unparalleled beauty. There was a 3-inch long wound on his left arm. Even though it was tightly bandaged with rags, blood still seeped out. He seemed not to feel the sharp pain in his arm and his expression was normal. If not for the troop's words that crossed the line just now, he would not have even frowned. "Brother Li, we've implicated you this time." Although he was reprimanded, the troop did not seem to be angry. He even smiled apologetically at the youth. If not for the youth in brown's righteous help, leading them to flee everywhere and relying on the advantage of being familiar with the terrain, they kept approaching Xianxia district. Along the way they caused trouble for the Xingyi army several times. They were afraid that they would not have lasted until now. They would have reported to Yan Luodian long ago. The youth with the surname Li shook his head slightly and said in a low voice, "I'm fine. What should we do next? Are we just going to sit here and wait for death?" Someone murmured softly. Everyone was silent. Out of the 2,000 troops, there were less than 1,000 now. The remaining brothers were all killed by the Xingyi army in order to cover their retreat or protect the people. One by one they died tragically. Thinking of those scenes, some of them could not help but cover their eyes and cry. Chapter 425. After the youth with the surname Li heard him, he said boldly, "How can I miss out on such a joyous occasion?" The troop member's face was bitter. He said to Li Yun, "Brother Li has already helped us a lot. We can't let you lose your life no matter what. You're skilled in martial arts. You'll definitely break out of the encirclement. We don't ask for anything else. We only ask for Brother Li to go to Xiangyang district and tell our master Lang Jun that even though we're bandits, we have the guts to fight till the end. We didn't embarrass him today." Li Yun stood up with his spear in his right hand. "You're all unyielding men. If I abandon you, I won't feel at ease for the rest of my life. There's no need to say anything. Either we rush down together and fight again, or we walk together on the road to hell. Or we wait for death here. Don't make a fuss." Li Yun's heroic demeanor boosted everyone's morale by a notch. Yes, what was there to be afraid of? Even if they couldn't survive today, at most they would walk on the road to hell. They had so many loyal brothers by their side. They wouldn't be lonely at all. They were originally bandits. Every day they lived with swords and blood. They were already indifferent to life and death. At most, they would leave a scar as big as a bowl and come back to the human world 18 years later. Brotherly, I owe you 2 lives. If there's a next life, I'll do anything for you. Li Yun's martial arts were very strong. In the eyes of many troops, he was even stronger than their chief instructor. His spear technique was vigorous and vigorous. He didn't have any stage fright even when fighting 1 against 10. If it wasn't for Li Yun's help, the troops would have been wiped out. They wouldn't have the chance to talk about their lofty aspirations here. Don't be fooled by Li Yun's usual manner of speaking and smiling, appearing to be very cold and aloof. He was actually very shy on the inside. He smiled shyly at the troops' heartfelt words. He didn't have the slightest sorrow of going to hell. We're all brothers. Why bother about this? The troop member was startled. After a while he said with reddened eyes, yes, we're all brothers. Given the current situation, the troops had no way to take care of the people. In the beginning, if they abandoned the people, the Xingyi army's night attack wouldn't cause much harm to them. However, in the end he could not bear to give them up. Once he gave up, these people would practically be sentenced to death. The Xingyi army raised the banner of doing everything for the people, but in reality, they were just a group of mobs venting their inner anger and acting recklessly. Look at the scenes wherever they went. They even looked down on the troops who were originally bandits. Even when they were bandits, they were not as arrogant as the Xingyi army. At this point, they were already helpless. They couldn't even protect themselves, so how could they protect these commoners? Everyone in the troop packed up the few arrows in the quiver, checked the use of the crossbows, and wiped the daggers or long knives on their waists. They all looked serious, as if they were not going to die, but were preparing for some kind of solemn ceremony. Everyone made up their minds. Even if they died, they wouldn't let those bastards have a good time. The solemn atmosphere affected the young children, and once they opened their mouths, they wailed loudly. A little girl in a red cotton-padded jacket, she looked no more than 4 or 5 years old. She escaped with her sister. She grabbed the corner of a troop's shirt with her little hand. Her watery eyes became rounder because she was starving and tears welled up in her eyes. She looked at the troop pitifully. Uncle, hungry. The troop lowered his head and looked at her. They looked at each other silently for a while. Then he searched his body with both hands and found a bag of dry steamed buns. Then he took off his water bag. Soak yourself in the water and go on your way after you're full. Even if you die, don't be a hungry ghost. The child shouted inarticulately, unwilling to take the water bag and the steamed buns. Uncle, don't go, the troop sighed. If he hadn't joined the bandits that year, he might have gotten married and had a daughter this big. Take it. I'll help you chase away the bad guys, then we'll eat together. Although it was a dry steamed bun, it had been kept warm by his body. In addition, the weather was relatively hot, so it was not very hard. If it was mixed with some water to eat, half of it would be 30% full. The troop ruthlessly pried open the child's meaty claws. He got up and strode away to gather with his brothers. Even if they were to die, they had to do something big before they died. The foot of the mountain was surrounded by more than 4,000 members of the Xingyi army. More than 100 torches burned fiercely, reflecting their faces into an orange color. Burn. Everyone stay here and guard. Let's see if these people are really so strong-willed. I don't believe that they can bear not to come out when they're being roasted with smoke and fire. Kill whoever comes out. Actually, it's better if they don't come out. I heard that human flesh tastes good. If it's cooked, don't let it go to waste. Many members of the Xingyi army looked terrified when they heard the cruel words from the burly man, but more of them looked fanatical. They raised their torches high and were about to fall. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Arrows shot out from the darkness with a final roar. In an instant, many members of the Xingyi army fell. The Xingyi army had fought with this troop several times and had suffered greatly from the crossbows. They had also learned their lesson. Chapter 426. Is that the crossbow of the troops? Li Yun recognized the familiar buzzing sound immediately, but he realized that the direction of the arrows was wrong. Before he could think, a few more arrows pierced through the air, accurately saving a few troops who were on the brink of death. Oh, are they reinforcements? Li Yun's face was filled with joy. If he could survive, who would want to seek death? After thinking about it, the silver-white spear returned to its threatening state and instantly repelled 2 enemies. He shouted loudly, "Brothers, reinforcements are here." Reinforcements? Could it be that the brother who volunteered to look for Lang Jun for help had already completed his mission? A strong desire to live ignited in his heart. His originally dispirited spirit was suddenly roused, and a strong resistance erupted. As if to confirm Li Yun's words, countless arrows buzzed and the corpses of the Xingyi army fell continuously. After 2 waves of shooting, a group of men and horses rushed out from the darkness. Wasn't the leader the people were very familiar with, Meng Hun? Endless anger brewed in their murderous cries. It was as if they wanted to take revenge and collect all the blood debts of their brothers. The Xingyi army's torches did not set the forest on fire, but they burned their own people. The raging fire burned their bodies. Painful cries mixed with murderous cries. The place was like a battlefield of Azura. People died every second. Jiang Pingji put down her crossbow, raised her hand to pull out the long sword from her waist, and rushed to the battlefield. The sword in her hand rose and fell, taking a life with each slash. In a short while her body was stained with blood. Li Yun picked up his spear again to look for the bandit leader. Who knew that the bandit leader ran so fast, wanting to escape when he saw that the situation was not good. Where is he? He was suspicious. He used the spear in his hand to carve out a path of blood, but he did not see the strong bandit. His eyes narrowed and he saw a familiar figure. It was as if he saw the most beautiful virgin and his eyes lit up. He was about to rush over to snatch the head, but before he could get close, a white light flashed across the bandit's neck, and his head flew up into the sky. When he looked again, a pair of unfamiliar hands grabbed the fallen head. Liam was speechless. Who snatched his head? The enemy is a bandit. Whoever doesn't surrender will be killed. The skinny youth raised the head of the muscular man high up, and his hoarse voice was filled with strong unwillingness. Of course, Jiang Pingji was indignant. The troops that she had nurtured meticulously and spent a lot of money and resources to nurture were almost defeated by the Xingyi army. How could she be reconciled if she did not kill them back? However, she knew very well that if she allowed the situation to continue, it would only cause more casualties. Even though she shouted these words, the 2 sides who were already in a killing frenzy had no intention of stopping. Only when the Xingyi army gradually fell into a disadvantageous position, the foot of the mountain was covered with charred corpses and the strong smell of burnt meat filled their noses, did they gradually regain their senses. The remnants of the Xingyi army knelt on the ground and surrendered. Some of you check the captives. The rest of you go and extinguish the fire lest it burns the forest. Jiang Pingji said in a hoarse voice. She casually threw the level stone aside. Her eyes revealed a ferocious glint and no one dared to look her in the eye. I'll settle the score with the Xingyi army sooner or later. He deserves to die for injuring my subordinates. Meng Hun clenched his fists, anger brewing on his calm face. The battlefield was barely cleared until dawn. Including the troops brought by Jiang Pingji, there were only 1,800 people left. By Lord! Meng Hun opened his sore eyes as if he would cry in the next second. He could not help but feel heartache. Out of the 3,000 troops brought from Chongzhou, only 1,800 were left. Although the casualty rate was not high, every troop was the best of the best according to the standards of this world. Losing one was heartache, let alone losing nearly half of them. Are they all buried? Jiang Pingji frowned, but she did not reveal much emotion. She was used to seeing life and death. At most, she would feel sentimental for a moment, but she would not wallow in it and be unable to extricate herself. My brothers have all been buried. Meng Hun originally wanted to bring their corpses back, but the current situation did not allow for it. He could only bear the pain and bury them on the spot. Everyone had a grave. The only consolation was that their graves were all in the same place, so they should not feel lonely. Bring them back. Jiang Pingji's expression was solemn. Her gaze swept around calmly and landed on Li Yun. Seeing the state of his right hand, she raised her eyebrows and asked Meng Hun, "Who is this person? Why haven't I seen him before?" According to Jiang Pingji's training method, the position of the thick calluses on the troops' hands was not like that. Hearing her question, one of the troops braced himself and said, "Brother Li is our benefactor." Benefactor? Jiang Pingji looked at Li Yun. What's going on? At the mention of Li Yun, many people felt that they were really lucky. Li Yun was from Fengyi County. His parents died when he was young and he learned martial arts from his mentor in the mountains near Fengyi County. Previously, when the troops were being chased by the Xingyi army, Li Yun happened to pass by. He heard about the atrocities of the Xingyi army and subconsciously sided with the troops. He enthusiastically volunteered to lead the troops and help them get rid of their pursuers. He looked cold, but in fact he was a friendly young man. He was straightforward and not pretentious. In addition, he helped to save people several times, so he was quickly accepted by the troops and they called each other brothers. Jiang Pingji listened and calmly replied, "Oh. Do you have anywhere else to go?" Jiang Pingji asked Li Yun. Li Yun did not react for a moment, then he said, "My master asked me to go down the mountain to take a look, but he didn't specify where to go." In fact, his master's original words were that the situation in the world had changed. Only by continuously challenging people and fighting could he improve his martial arts skills. Hence he asked him to go down the mountain to broaden his horizons. If he returned with a scholarly reputation, he might be able to marry a good wife and carry on the Li family's ancestral line. Because Dongqing valued literature and restrained martial arts, learning martial arts was not as popular as learning literature. His master originally said that Li Yun would become a big problem. Now that the world was in chaos, it was a good time for martial artists to rise and roam the world. If you don't have a fixed goal, why not come to Xiangyang district? Now that the north of Dongqing is in a mess, it's very dangerous for you to be alone outside. Li Yun thought about it and nodded readily. He saw that the slender youth in front of him was very skilled. If he went to Xiangyang district, he might have a chance to spar with him in the future. Although Li Yun was smart, he had blind trust in his master. He would never forget his two goals for going down the mountain: to fight and improve his martial arts skills, to gain a scholarly reputation and get a wife. Seeing the aloof Prince Charming reveal such a naive and sweet side, the audience in the streaming room expressed their amazement. Tumi Dalao, #propping chin. The handsome Prince Charming has been lured to Xiangyang district by the streamer just like that. Doesn't he know that the streamer's boat can only be boarded and not left? You can refer to the pitiful coach Lu Yue. Now he's working overtime like a dog. Buxiang jiaging Xianxia. I seem to see the future of a delicate flower gradually withering under the pressure of working overtime. Chapter 427. Li Yun's words made Jiang Pingji's mood slightly better. Coincidentally, she caught a glimpse of the bullet screen in the streaming room. Host V. There's free high-quality labor, why wouldn't I use it? She straightforwardly admitted her little scheme. If she didn't abduct Li Yun for labor, could it be for his face? Tumi Dalao. Streamer, I give you 82 points for your straightforwardness. The rest is 666 points for you. Rinshin Weiku. I give the streamer's straightforwardness 101 points. One more point won't make her proud. Yinuajia Zhuge Qinmo. I've never seen such a shameless person. I only admire the streamer for being thick-skinned. Shan's Haotio. Compared to the streamer, even Zhou Bopi seems to have become kinder. Trinitrotoluene. All of you are talking about the streamer, then I pity the handsome Li Yun. I'm a fan of his looks. He's handsome, can fight, and has a strong contrast. There aren't many handsome guys like him in this society anymore. I should be a fan and cherish them. Li Yun was completely unaware that his looks were sought after by the audience in another world. He brandished his spear with one hand and flung away the blood stains on the spear. His movements were elegant and clean. This dashing action mercilessly poked the cuteness of some fangirls. Jiang Pingji ignored the agitated bullet screen and leaped onto White's back. After a night's time, the troops had been assembled. Counting the number of people, there were about 1,500 members of the Xingyi army as captives, and 2,300 people from Fengyi County were escorted out by the troops who risked their lives. Jiang Pingji gave them a choice. Whoever was willing could follow her to Xiangyang district. If they were unwilling, there was no problem. They would be given a day's worth of rations. Their life and death would be up to the heavens. Everyone had witnessed the brutality and recklessness of the Xingyi army. Now they didn't even dare to return to their hometown, let alone walk outside. Therefore, except for a few who wanted to seek refuge with their relatives, most of the people chose to follow Jiang Pingji to Xiangyang district. No matter what, it couldn't be worse than the current situation. It wasn't far from Xiangyang district. Even if they rushed all the way, it wouldn't take more than 12 hours. Even though the Tsing-Yi army captives and ordinary people were somewhat of a hindrance, it would take them at most 2 or 3 days to cover the journey. As for the rations for the journey, everyone would save some. It should be able to last until they reached Xiangyang district. It was fine as long as they didn't starve to death. Jiang Pingji was calculating in her heart. From the corner of her eyes, she saw the emaciated faces of the troops and her heart softened. Let's eat something first. We'll continue our journey after you're full. The troops received the most rations while the common people only got half. Regarding this distribution method, even if the commoners had complaints in their hearts, they did not dare to voice it out. As long as they didn't starve to death, they would be able to survive until they reached Xiangyang district. Jiang Pingji gave the troops time to eat. Almost everyone held the dry food and chewed it in big mouthfuls. They ate very fiercely. Some people's eyes reddened as they ate, their salty tears wetting their rations. "Uncle, are you crying from hunger?" The little girl in the red jacket widened her round eyes and used her meaty claws to wipe away the tears on his face. She thought for a moment, lowered her head and took out half of the steamed bun that her troops had given her last night. She handed it to him. "For you." The steamed bun had already gone bad. The soldier raised his hand and rubbed the little girl's head. "This is more delicious. I'm envious of it. That's why I cried, to exchange it with you." The troop took back the rotten steamed bun and secretly stuffed the dry food in his hand to the child. "Let's eat together." Not only him but almost all the brothers thought they would not live to see the next day. They did not expect that their master would personally bring people to rescue them. Calculating the distance between the two places, it was not difficult for them to imagine how fast Jiang Pingji and the others had traveled all the way. The more it was like this, the more touched they were. They wished they could die for their master. "Okay." The little girl answered crisply. Her face was full of innocence. "My lord, something bad has happened." Meng Hun caught up with Jiang Pingji in a few quick steps. He said with a serious expression, "I've asked a few brothers. They said that the Tsing-Yi army had divided into 2 groups. One group chased after them to kill them, and the other group directly headed for Xiangyang district. According to their speed, I'm afraid they have reached Xiangyang district at midnight last night. Should we hurry back to rescue them?" Jiang Pingji closed her eyelids and said calmly, "No need. Follow the normal speed." Meng Hun's heart tightened. He did not understand why Jiang Pingji was not the least bit nervous or worried. "My lord's foundation is still weak. Xiangyang district is the only place to stay. However, Xiangyang district has experienced the earthquake and the Tsing-Yi army's rampage. It is still in the stage of construction. It is simply a bottomless pit. If Xiangyang district is conquered by the Tsing-Yi army, it is equivalent to handing over all of Jiang Pingji's assets to the Tsing-Yi army. Even Master Qiguan and the rest will die." Jiang Pingji understood Meng Hun's worries. She said, "You should have more confidence in Wenjing. He was born at the border of Dongqing. He is used to such things since he was young. Frankly speaking, the Tsing-Yi army is just a motley crew. Their numbers are like praying mantises, but the power they can exert is even weaker than praying mantises. Without a large number of siege weapons, do they still want to take Xiangyang district from Wenjing? If they really take it down, Wenjing does not need the Tsing-Yi army to do anything. He will commit suicide out of shame." Meng Hun was stunned. He really did not think of that. Jiang Pingji suddenly sneered. Her eyes revealed a somewhat malicious glint. "Compared to Xiangyang district, I am actually more worried about the Tsing-Yi army. Wenjing is an expert in the treacherous way of killing. His essence is to drive people to death. He does not care about whether his methods are light or dark. Let him defend the city. I also do not know how many of the Tsing-Yi army will survive. Xiangyang district is still lacking people. I hope not too many will die." Meng Hun listened and was secretly speechless. Obviously he and Qiguan Rang have been together for a few years. Why is it that his understanding of Qiguan Rang is less than half of the Lord's? "Do you know why the Tsing-Yi army was defeated so easily?" Jiang Pingji said scornfully. "A group of ordinary people without armor, how can they resist other people's knives, spears and sticks? Attacking a city is not like other things. If the attacking party does not have enough siege weapons and wants to climb the enemy's wall, then they have to sacrifice their lives. Naturally, Jiang Pingji's previous night attack on Xiangyang district was purely a special case. After returning, I really have to pay attention to the development of this area. I wonder which famous Mahists are there in Dongqing. Jiang Pingji nibbled on her rations and muttered to herself. If there were, she really wanted to kidnap a few of them back. People in ancient times thought that it was just a strange and obscene technique. However, Jiang Pingji knew that technology could change the fate of a country. Let's not talk about the distant ones. Taking the most basic siege weapons, ladders, giant catapults, siege carts, siege towers, ramparts, ballistae, all of these could play a huge role in a siege. Chapter 428. The aforementioned siege weapons had yet to be invented in this era. Could be seen how backward the entire siege technology was. If someone else said this, Meng Hun would probably say that they were distracted by playfulness, but the person who said this was Jiang Pingji, who didn't know that the improved crossbows used by the troops were invented by her. As the chief coach of the troops, no one knew better than him how much the improved crossbows added to the troops' combat power. To put it bluntly, if not for the improved crossbows, the 3,000 troops would have died many times. The Mahis. I haven't heard of them, Meng Hun thought carefully, but unfortunately he couldn't find any useful memories. Although it was an era of hundreds of schools of thought, due to the influence of Confucianism in the previous dynasty, Confucianism was still the leader of the 100 schools of thought and occupied a large part of the market. The Mahists were rather low-key among the 100 schools of thought. Perhaps there were many disciples of the Mahists, but most of them concealed their identities and had a low reputation. Meng Hun felt that it would be difficult to find a few outstanding Mahists in Dongqing. Forget it, it's not too late to think about it in the future. She wanted to recruit the Mahists not because she wanted to gain anything from them. Who else in the world was more proficient than her in war machines? She just wanted to guide them in the direction of scientific experts and leave the seeds of science in the world. Ignorant and conservative thinking would not only restrict the development of the era, it would even cause the pace of the era to regress. Jiang Pingji wanted to usher in a new era, but she alone was not enough. She needed more pioneers. However, these things were too far away for her at the moment. Instead of thinking about these, she might as well think about the construction of Xiangyang district. 2 flowers bloomed, one on each side. Just as Jiang Pingji trusted, Qiguanrang did not let her down. With just 1,000 imperial guards and the 2,000 recruited soldiers, they firmly defended the Xiangyang district. The Xingyi army did not have enough rations and could only hold on for 2 to 3 days. Not to mention that they could not take down the city after a long time, they successively lost more than 1,000 men. In the end, they could only helplessly choose to retreat. It was like a tortoise full of thorns, it was impossible to bite it off. Qiguanrang stood on top of the wall and looked at the retreating Xingyi army regretfully. He waved his feather fan lightly and sighed. What a pity. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too few people at his disposal and the city was in ruins, he would really like to take the risk and swallow the Xingyi army. When Luo Yu heard this, he thought that something was wrong, so he comforted him. Not to mention anything else, he felt that he could fall asleep instantly if his head touched the pillow. Feng Jin and the rest received the news and rushed over. Seeing that Jiang Pingji had returned safely, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The scale of the Xingyi army that attacked Xiangyang district was not large and they were just a motley crew. They had the advantage of the city walls and the equipment to defend the city. In comparison, Jiang Pingji and the rest who went out to rescue them were in more danger. Now that they saw her return unscathed, the boulder in the hearts of Feng Jin and the others was finally lifted. Looking left and right, why did they not see Qiguanrang? Wenjing is too tired from guarding the city these few days. I just let him go back and rest first. After Jiang Pingji finished speaking, she then turned to Feng Jin. Huayu, I'll leave the matter of how to make arrangements for the people of the Xingyi army and Fengyi County who were captured. There are many young and strong men among them. I think they can be put to good use. Feng Jin knew that there would be many more households in Xiangyang district, and he immediately felt sorry for Qiguanrang. One must know that this unlucky brother was in charge of registering the household register. The more people there were, the more work he had to do. In ancient times, there were no computers or typewriters. When Qiguanrang re-recorded the household register, Every word had to be written by hand. Not to mention him, even the few girls he borrowed from Jiang Pingji had dark circles under their eyes during this period of time. Now that there were suddenly thousands of people added to Xiangyang district, it meant an endless life of overtime. Qiguan Rang did not show any reaction on the surface, but he was probably gnashing his teeth in anger. Feng Jin secretly thought to himself, but he agreed to it verbally. Jin will definitely make arrangements for them. Jiang Pingji then said to Su Ku, with thousands of extra mouths, the food in the granary can't withstand the consumption. Recruit labor from these people as soon as possible and let them work in exchange for food. After all, we are not running a charity, the free food can't provide for a few meals. Su Ku nodded. Although the workload had increased compared to Qiguan Rang, he could still accept it. Humans could not withstand comparison. As for the troops, when Jiang Pingji mentioned the troops, she could not help but think of the fact that nearly half of them had been lost. Thinking about it made her heart ache. Coach Meng, let the troops have a day off first. They have been running all over the place during this period of time. Everyone is tired. As for the brothers who are injured, give them time to recuperate according to the severity of their injuries. They will not join the work in Xiangyang district for the time being. Wait until their injuries are healed, then arrange tasks. But you're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.